ready. We're going to start off with a very nice presentation from elementary schools for new and existing program update. Good evening. We're actually going to get you guys rather involved tonight. As you may be aware, a few years ago, the Next Generation Science Standards, a new set of voluntary, rigorous, and internationally benchmarked standards for K-12 science education were released. Based on these standards, New Jersey then adopted the New Jersey Student Learning Standards of Science. We like to have our own things once in a while. These standards encourage our students to learn through inquiry, experimentation, and reflection, all while developing social skills through collaboration with peers. This year, Collingswood and Oaklyn staff have been busy piloting Mystery Science as our science platform. Recently, Collingswood joined the state in developing several grade-level assessments, as well as having one of our staff members apply for and get accepted to join the Department of Ed's team for the new standardized assessment in grade 5. Tonight, we wanted to give you an opportunity to dive into our new science. I have with me a few outstanding individuals who would like to share a science experiment with them. So I'm going to call them up. We have our second grade teacher from Newby, Miss Francis, and some of her volunteers.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Francis, and I teach second grade over at Marquette School. I am here to present a quick example of one of our science investigations that is new to the second grade science curriculum this year. At this point in our unit on matter, which is our first unit of the year, we have already learned all about the states of matter as well as observable properties of different materials and what kinds of properties make certain materials good for specific things. So the final standard for this unit is the following. Construct an argument with evidence that some changes caused by heating or cooling can be reversed and some cannot. So to assist me in completing this investigation, I brought along some young scientists. I have Jacob, and I have Isabella, and I have Jackson, students from my class. And they will be working with some board members to solve today's mystery. Do we have 4 volunteers who would like to participate? If you would like to participate, come on up. There we go. Okay, so in a classroom setting, we would begin this investigation with some exploration and discussions. We would review the states of matter and some different observable properties of materials, and then I would pose the first question.
Do you think matter can change from one state to another?
So we would first ask, do you think matter can change from one state to another? And we would have a class discussion reflecting on what we've already learned so far in the unit. And then after a quick discussion, I would ask the next question, which we would again discuss as a class.
Do you think that a change in state of matter can be reversed?
Very good. So that question in case you couldn't hear was, do you think that a change in state of matter can be reversed? So the next step after having that conversation will be to display all of the materials that you see in front of you on the table. For those of you who can't see, we have a bag of ice, we have a cup of salt, a cup of half and half, a cup of vanilla extract, and a cup of sugar. Are any predictions for me? So we would go through each material and we would classify whether we thought it was a solid, a liquid, or a gas, and then based on what we saw, we would jot down some observable properties on a science lab sheet. Now, a lot of teachers have decided to cut and glue those lab sheets into their science notebooks and create interactive notebooks, which is a really fun thing for kids to go back and reflect on so they can see all their work, not only from the whole unit, but also throughout the whole year. So after students record this on their lab sheets, which you all have examples on your tables there, I would pose a question to the students which will prompt them to create a hypothesis.
What do you think will happen if we mix all of these elements together?
So at this point, the students would create a hypothesis and they would jot that down on their lab sheet, and we would start thinking. We have another young scientist with us, Nate just joined us. Welcome, Nate. So at this point, I would ask the students to start mixing their elements, so maybe the students and the Board of Ed members could work together. So if you could work together to take the cup of salt and dump that into the bag of ice. And then make sure to seal up the bag really well. And then in the smaller bag, you would pour in the half and half, the vanilla, and the sugar. A lot of teamwork for this one. And this one we have to seal up really well. This would also be a great time during science to talk about measurement and different math skills. The kids could actually measure out themselves if you have all the materials and tools to do that. So, second graders, who remembers what the next step is? What is it? Very good. So the next step would be to take the small sandwich baggie and put the whole thing, which is totally sealed, inside the bag of ice. And close it up. You'll see on the tables in front of you, I put some towels just, you know, to keep your, I don't know, just in case you're wearing anything fancy or... Jacob, what's the next step? Do you remember? What do we have to do? You shake it up really hard for a long time, so you might have to take turns. This would also be a good time to play some Taylor Swift songs, get them dancing. You might need to take turns. Your arms are going to get tired. There's conversations happening about what's going on in the bag. So after we exhaust our arms and shake the bags for 5 to 8 minutes, and the grown-ups do a lot of laughing, and the kids, we would stop and we would have a conversation, because If we looked inside the bag, something will have happened. And the next question that I would pose to the scientists is, what happened to the elements when we mixed them all together? What did we end up with? And young scientists, what did we end up with after we did all the shaking? What would we end up with at the end? A solid, and then what was the solid? Ice cream. We would end up with ice cream, and then the teacher would pass out some spoons, and we would eat the ice cream, and it would be delicious. So the final discussion at the end of this experiment would be to think about and brainstorm if the changes that happened could be reversed. And we would have a discussion. So is there anything that we could do to turn this now solid back into a liquid? And we would know that there is, right? What could we do, Bella? Yeah, so if it got hot or warm or whatever, it would melt back into a liquid. So as you can see, this kind of experiment is really hands-on, really engaging, a lot of fun for the kids. And what we're seeing so far with it is that the kids are really learning a lot more because they are the ones that are doing the work. They're not being told this is what happens when you do this. They're seeing it with their own eyes right in front of them. So, give a hand for our young scientists, please.
And I'm here tonight to introduce our literacy coach, Christy Graham, and she has brought two colleagues with her, Sue Miller and Lauren Katz. And no, they cannot compete with ice cream, but they have come tonight because they're going to share some exciting things that are going on in our classrooms with students. Christy's role in the district is our literacy coach for elementary students. And she is quite impactful on our balanced literacy approach. And tonight she's going to share some of the work she's done with these teachers who have volunteered tonight to share their experiences.
Good evening. I'm Christy Graham, and I am the elementary literacy coach here in Collingswood. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my role in the district and how it impacts teaching and learning. Just quickly, a little bit about me. I've been a teacher here in Collingswood for 13 years, and many of those years I served as third grade teacher at Charter School. And for the past 5, I have been the elementary literacy coach. And I get to work with teachers from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade in all 5 of the elementary schools. So, what does a literacy coach do? I know that's not something that everyone really talks about or knows all the time. A lot of people confuse the role of a literacy coach with a reading specialist. A literacy coach is a little bit different. A literacy coach aims to impact teacher practice and student learning. And literacy coaches work mostly with teachers. Because we work mostly with teachers, it's our job to understand different adult learning styles and personalities and to adapt to them. We also support teacher growth and promote decision-making and reflection. And the way that we do that is, typically what I do is I go into the classroom and I sort of assess what's going on alongside the classroom teacher. And then we identify some student learning goals from there. And we come up with some ideas to implement those ideas in the classroom. And then we kind of see how they go. We co-teach together. And then we talk about it and decide, was it successful, was it not successful, and we go from there. When it's not successful, we go back to the drawing board, we revise, and we try something new. Another thing that we do together is cultivate collaboration, because we know that learning doesn't happen in isolation. So collaboration is a big part of what I do with all of the teachers. And we build trusting relationships, which is really important so that teachers feel comfortable coming to me and saying, you know, I might need a little help with something, could you give me some ideas, and they know they're not going to be judged. So it's important to have those trusting relationships with teachers. And then of course, all of that leads to greater student achievement because we now have instruction that's more targeted and effective. So, and what happens during a coaching cycle? Typically what I work through with teachers is a coaching cycle. So teachers would sign up to work with me, and after they do, I usually go to them once a week for 4 to 6 sessions, and we work together through what we call a coaching cycle. And it really, we have found it to be much more meaningful work that we get to do because each session builds upon the last. So it's not just a really quick one-time meeting. So typically what the first thing we'll do when I meet with the teacher during our first session is we analyze the student work and student data. And then what we do is we select some student learning goals, either based on the collective group as a whole or sometimes individual students. And then we plan collaboratively for some instruction in the classroom to try something new, to try to move along those student learning goals. And we create a lot of resources, sometimes teacher resources, sometimes parent resources, sometimes student resources, which you will see a few examples of tonight, which Sue Miller is going to talk about, and so is Ron. And then once we plan and create these resources, we go in the classroom, and we many times coach each lesson together. And that's the most popular approach, I'd say, but sometimes it's more appropriate for me to go in the classroom and demonstrate a lesson, model a lesson first. And sometimes it's more appropriate for me to go and watch a teacher teach and offer some feedback. So those are, that's pretty much what I do through my coaching work. And you're going to hear, more importantly than hearing from me, are some of the classroom teachers that I've had the pleasure of working with several times. One is Lauren Katz, she teaches 4th grade over at Sharp, and Sue Miller teaches 1st grade at Tatum. So they're going to tell you a little bit about their experiences of working through a coaching cycle with me, and the work that's come out of it that has benefited the students. And before they do, I just want to say I really can't overstate enough the value of having the 2 minds come together and brainstorm and collaborate with different perspectives, different strengths, different content knowledge, and really creating something that for students that really didn't exist before. So without further ado, here is Sue Miller.
So I've done a few coaching cycles with Christy, but I'm going to share 2 of my favorites. We started with, in 1st grade, students are expected to write in what they call a reading notebook. And when I first started teaching reading notebooks, they just were kind of like a task, another task a student had to do while they were reading. So I wanted to try and make them more authentic to the students. So I went to Christy and I asked her, I said, we have to do these reading notebooks, and the students aren't really engaged in them, and they kind of just seem like another task. So when we brainstormed, we came up with what we call a reading diary now. And so we kind of transformed it into the reading diary, so it became like their personal diary. They could write it in if they wanted to. They could collect ideas from their reading, and it really took off. And they write in them all the time. So every year now, when I have to introduce the reading notebook, I always introduce it as a reading diary. And there's an example up there from a couple years ago of how a student took a post-it that they posted in a book, LOL, that they love, and just took that post and just went a little deeper and thought about it. So the reading diary became a place where students could apply new strategies that they're learning. It's a place where you can take a jot into a deeper thought, a place where students could collect visual reminders. So if we have parts in the classroom or something that I thought would be useful to them, they'll blow it into the reading diary. It also was a place where they put their reading goals, and this way the bookmark, which was given to each of you, became a tangible reminder for students. It was meant to keep track of the expectations that are expected in each level. So instead of, normally a student will meet with a teacher for a period of around 2 weeks to go through all of the information that they need to learn for the reading level, and then they move on to the next level. So this was a way to remind them of everything that they've done so far in that level, and to make sure that they're building upon this in each of the levels as they go up. I also post these in the classroom, so they're by where they shop for their books, so they also can know what it is that's expected to them. And then from there, we came up with the letter that you also have for parents, so parents know that these are the things that were worked on in class during these levels, and also strategies for when their child is at home reading independently, or if they're reading with their child, things that they could do that I don't think, sometimes you just read with your child, so it was a way to say, hey, why don't you make a jot of what you're reading, or why don't you, I know Miss Miller is giving you this bookmark, why don't you look at your bookmark and see what else that you can do, and also let the parent know, like, these are the things that you're going to see in the next level, what your child's bringing home in their reading bag, and then things that they can do with their child as they're reading at night with them.
For that, Sue. I'm going to do that with my fourth grade reading level. So I had a chance to work with Christy, and it's a little intimidating getting up here in front of all of you, which I imagine what it was like for my students last year when we first started our coaching cycle. I had a class of introverts, which you would think would be like a teacher's dream, but when you're trying to get them to talk about books or math, it was really, really challenging. So Christy and I got together to just informally talk about the class. It's really nice working with Christy. I call her my literacy / life coach because we talk about everything, including teaching and how it's impacting all of our students. So it was nice to just talk about the fact that I had such a quiet, lovely class. I thought that I wanted to come out of their shell a little bit. And so this was really important to me because I heard somewhere that storytelling or speaking in general is like our cultural currency, right? It's the way that we get people to listen to us by telling stories, by trying to persuade people to agree with us, which I imagine many of you are here to do tonight. So we wanted to find a way to bring our students out of their shells and to really create a culture of talk in fourth grade that wasn't really there before. So the first thing that we did was we gathered some baseline data. So we went into the classroom, we had our students have a grand conversation. So they talked about a book that we recently read together, and we just took notes on the types of things the students had said, how they interacted with each other. And then I met with them later in small groups and just kind of said, what's hard about this? And what's hard about having a conversation? And their responses were really enlightening. Things like, oh, well, I was afraid someone might make fun of me if I said something that was wrong. Or, you know, like at the end of the book, I don't really remember what happened at the beginning. And so things like that really informed what we did next. Was we thought we had this really great targeted plan to help students figure out what they could do when they were talking. So prompts for sharing their ideas, prompts for what to do when they were get confused. But then my class was so lovely that they just wanted to use every single prompt. And so that was like the big deal for them. Not that they had this great meaningful conversation, but Miss Katz, Miss Graham, I used all 10 prompts that you gave me. Isn't that amazing? And we were like, yes, but that's not the point. So we went back to the drawing board, and we then went in and we modeled the process. So what does it look like to have a conversation? And Christy and I, we just started with talking about like nothing. Like what would you do if you won $1 million? Before we got into reading articles and reading books, just talking about little things, talking about the weather, talking about what you're going to do this weekend. So we modeled the process, and we had the kids observe us, just like the first time we observed them. We gave them checklists, and they were noticing the things that we did as speakers and listeners. So once we came to a couple of items, like the listener, the speaker roles, we then had the students go ahead and the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. I have a reunion twice a year, and so I got some really great ideas, and I brought them back and said, Christy, I have a million ideas. What do I do with them all? And that's usually how our sessions go. I bring like a stack of books, articles, and we figure out how to make sense of the best practices out there. So we realized that now that we're on a roll with students, we wanted to look at teaching the students talk behaviors and language. So just how your body is, how your voice is, what are your eyes doing during this conversation? And how do you talk to each other? How do you ask a question? How do you add on to a conversation that you're not just restating something that someone said, but you're adding on and bringing the thinking along. And then we layered in the content. So what you see here, every unit of study in reading has 4 main goals. And so this is a checklist. That's one piece of the checklist there. And this can be a really meaningful tool, or it can just be more words on a piece of paper. So we really wanted to make it something meaningful, a tool that the students could use. So we just took we just have one piece there. So you can see that it's broken down into levels, and at 4th grade we want students to be moving on to that level 4. But what's important to us is looking at the student data. A lot of students were in level 2 or level 3, so we wanted to be able to move them up to level 4. And if we look back at John Hattie's work on visible thinking, he did a meta-analysis of 800 studies, and they found that one thing that you need to be able to do is when you're teaching students, you want to teach them 5% more. You want to teach them 100% new. You want to just move them incrementally. So this learning progression came out of his work that he did, and it moved students gradually along the learning progression. So, along with that tool, we broke down each of the pieces in this checklist, so being able to identify the main idea of a nonfiction text, analyzing parts, so being able to look at why is the introduction important, why is the conclusion important, analyzing author's craft, so figuring out when an author added text features for what reason, and cross-text synthesis, being able to read multiple articles and pull information. So we made talk folders. So we wanted to get away from those thought prompts that the students were so good at using and giving them ideas to use. So we have a to-do, and these things come directly from the checklist, and then students could then pick up a Post-it. They would talk about that one thing with their partner, and then they could move it over to the other side. So what this did was it allowed us to scaffold the process of talking, that we had a starting point for all students, regardless of what level they were on. They were able to jump in the conversation, and they had something specific that they could talk about. And then the last thing Christy and I did was we started developing social norms around talk in our classroom. And so we decided, and I imagine a lot of us, we want our students to be kids who share their opinions, share their thoughts, their wonders, their hopes, their dreams, their challenges, their triumphs. We want them to know that their voice matters and that what they have to say is important and valuable. And so I think that's something that we want all of our students to be able to do, and I'm going to continue doing with my students this year, is to be able to use their voices to ask questions, to ask for evidence when people are presenting you with their opinion, to advocate for others, and to be kind. So, thank you.
That's all. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share our learning and teaching experiences with you. Thank you.
Drop back to paragraph 3, the student report. Give us an update on what's going on with the students.
For academics on November 14th, Bowen University held an instant decision day at CHS, and on that day, some students went through the historically black colleges and university colleges. Between the two events, more than 20
hosted their first home playoff game in 18 years and defeated Meade to 3-0. They then defeated Highland Park 3-1, which earned the spot in the sectional semifinals. In the semifinals, they lost to Palmer. Last week, the football team defeated conference rival Haddon Heights 40-33. The team will conclude the season with that serve on next week. Several CHS seniors have signed with colleges to continue their activities. Travel to Philadelphia to watch a private rehearsal at Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. Well, you're dismissed if you want to get it together. You know what you're going to get to. And as far as the elementary school presentation, I want to thank you all. The enthusiasm was wonderful to see. The commitment the board has been talking for years about critical thinking, and it seems like everything you're doing, both in science and in literacy, is geared towards not memorization, not anything like that, but critical thinking, and it's really wonderful to see the enthusiasm of the teachers. And that is my favorite part of being a board member, is seeing that part and seeing what the front lines are doing to improve student retention. We have 3 more presentations, and they're going to take some time. So if there's anybody here who was specifically here for the elementary school presentations, we're having a really big, important discussion in a couple of minutes about the Collingswood Oaklyn expanded send receive, and Dr. Oswald's going to give that presentation. That's going to take some time. So I'm going to I'll give people a chance. If anybody wanted to exit right this second, that's fine. But I welcome everybody to stay because there's some really good information that's coming up soon. And that includes the teachers are welcome to stay. The teachers are allowed to leave without any penalty whatsoever. Okay. So you want to get started, Dr. Oswald? The next step, we're going to go to the update first.
I don't have a. Okay, each year the Board of Education Board of Education has 3 standing committees. Each year, each committee sets goals for itself, between 1 and 2 goals, depending on the kind of the breadth of each of the goals. So this year, the curriculum committee goal is throughout the 2017-18 school year, the elementary classroom teachers will participate in a curriculum development process to unpack the New Jersey student learning standards in science, design units, and develop hands-on activities aligned with the next generation science standard for each unit. The curriculum development process will culminate this summer with the writing of a formal curriculum that are aligned to the New Jersey student learning standards for science. As you saw this evening, our teachers in both Collingswood and in Oaklyn are well on their way to implementing next generation science standards in their classrooms. Our 2 teachers from Newby this evening demonstrated to you what teachers K-5 throughout both districts are doing in their science classrooms throughout the school year. So I think we are making really good progress and solid progress. We're using a resource called Mystery Science as kind of our guiding post for that. And I think as our teachers are going through that, they're learning what's working really well and some areas where they may need to enhance what's available in Mystery Science. The Personnel Committee also has a goal. Personnel Committee goal is the implementation of our teaching staff members of the Illuminate DNA Fast Bridge program, which is an student assessment and data collection, data management program that will better allow us as a district to assess where our students are in terms of mastering the standards that we teach at each grade level and methods that we can help to support them and interventions that we can provide along the way for students who require those. That's an area where we have training set up for next Tuesday. November 28th is a full day training. About 4 Collingswood and 4 Oaklyn teachers will be participating in that training next Tuesday, and then from there we will roll it out to the rest of the staff. We have a very full and tight agenda set for next Tuesday, so I'll have more to report on progress with that goal at the December meeting and beyond. And then the Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee has 2 goals. One of them is to expand the closed-circuit television security camera upgrades to each of our elementary schools. That goal is underway. We are installing cameras on the outside with the help of the Collingswood Police Department in terms of locations for those cameras. We're installing cameras on the outside to better protect our buildings and our assets in each one of those buildings. We are also continuing our LED conversion in each one of our schools. That will culminate hopefully this summer as we dedicate our workforce to really getting in and switching over all of our traditional lighting to LED lighting, which will result in savings for the district moving forward. Finally, we have one more board goal, an ad hoc committee goal, is the communications goal. I think last June, I believe it was, the ad hoc committee spoke about this goal and introduced it to the rest of the board. Thus far, we have brochures that are available at each one of our board meetings with a little information about how the board operates and the presentations that are presented that are offered each month. We have held a couple of hosted conversations in September and October. We have a new district website. The revision of that is complete. We also have a district app available for both your iPhone and Android phones. Board meeting notice signs to further promote our board meetings are outside each of our schools on the day of board meetings with locations and times posted. We video stream the board meetings. The link is available on the website. That started in September. Text messages go out the morning of each board meeting, of each scheduled board meeting. That's set to go through December 2017. As new board dates are decided in January, we will set those up to go out for the remainder of the year as well. So the board ad hoc committee engagement committee has a few other goals ahead of them that they would like to work on, but that's the progress that we've made to date. Questions?
So that we formalized our board goals, and we're constantly monitoring each month to make sure we stay on track towards what we're trying to accomplish throughout the year. Next is, I guess, Dr. Oswald, you're going to give a presentation on the Collingswood Oaklyn expanded sentence presentation. This is a really big deal. This is something that's been talked about for many, many years and has been discussed with a method of how to do it for the last 3 or 4 years, with a lot of success that we're coming to now. And I think that with Woodland and Oakland students coming into our district, it makes our district who it is. And the diversity that we have from the 3 schools coming together raises all of our students, and it raises up the Collingswood students. And we're really excited to have this proposal that's looking really good to welcome in Oakland students into our schools starting at 6th grade. And I think that that's just going to have tremendous benefits for both districts. I think all of the students in both districts will get a chance to increase their opinions and what they're learning, and it's going to increase competition, and everybody's going to benefit from having the interaction with each other. So with that, Dr. Oswald, I'd like you to get into the specifics of the presentation.
Okay. So the future of the Oakland and Collingswood Public Schools as a send-receive partnership that started many years ago. I'm going to present tonight pretty much the same presentation I presented last week in Oakland for the Oakland board and the Oakland community. There are some additional slides in the middle. Some folks have come up and asked some questions along the way. So I tried to address those questions as part of the presentation. That's the only thing that's changed in this. So a little bit of background information about the problems and opportunities facing Oakland, and then we're going to get to the exact same slide about Collingswood. This is absolutely not an all Oakland deal. The problems and opportunities for Oakland. Oakland receives about 36% of its funding through state aid, or 64% funded locally. We are currently under a 2% local tax increase cap. We're allowed a 2% local tax increase. If you take 2% of that if you take 64% locally funded times that 2%, that means the Oaklyn budget can only go up 1.28%. The entire budget can only go up 1.28% annually. Another challenge for Oaklyn is over the next 5 years, the 10th grade enrollment. I just took a look at 1 year. I could have picked any year. I picked 10th grade. It's the first year that the Oaklyn students currently in Collingswood High School. The Oaklyn enrollment will fluctuate over the next 5 years between 26 and 46 students per year. At a per pupil tuition rate, that makes budgeting very difficult, and it makes budgeting for that situation in Oaklyn nearly impossible. A 20 student fluctuation times the per pupil tuition rate is many hundreds of thousands of dollars that Oaklyn cannot finance. Because of those budget challenges over the past several years, Oaklyn has limited curricular opportunities as well as reduced co-curricular opportunities for the students at their junior high school level. So those are some of the challenges and opportunities ahead for Oaklyn. Same exact slide for Collingswood. Collingswood receives about 38% of its financing through state aid. 62% of it is locally funded. Same exact math. You take 62% of the 2% that we're allowed to raise taxes on an annual basis. That means Collingswood could raise its budget by 1.24% every single year. That's it. That is not a sustainable approach. According to New Jersey state aid report that we received after state aid adjustments in July, mid-July of this year, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes, Collingswood is currently $616,000, the state claims, $616,000 overfunded by the state of New Jersey. This year, we lost $125,000 in funding. $75,000 was budgeted to purchase our math series, re-up our math series for the next 5 years. That money Mrs. Coleman was able to purchase out of last year's funds, so we got lucky there. The other $50,000 was budgeted to hire an extra elementary school nurse in Collingswood who was not hired. So that's where that $125,000 came from. We absorbed that this year without impacting your programs in your schools one bit. That is not going to continue to happen. At a time when we have a new governor about ready to take office, we don't really know what's going to happen to state aid increases moving on, but we do know that the Senate leader who was just reelected is the one who's leading the bandwagon to redistribute state aid. That's where that $616,000, the pointer's not showing up, that's where that $616,000 comes from. The Senate leader is the one who wants to take that and spread it out among other school districts. So that's a very real challenge and a very real threat that lies ahead of us. A little bit of background, and this is really from the Oaklyn perspective. In 2012, Mrs. Coleman and I went into Oaklyn as the superintendent and the business administrator, which immediately helped to reduce their administrative costs in the district. They survived the next several years, the last 5 years, by cutting programs throughout their school. They used to have the Oaklyn house, the White House it was called, was next to the Oaklyn school. That house was sold several years ago. I can't tell you how many times in the Oaklyn budget we counted that money over and over and over again. The house was only sold once. And that house was sold. We can't keep counting on that money. We expanded our shared services with Collingswood to include maintenance, child study team, technology, a list of other things, athletics. So we tried to pick up the athletic programs from Oaklyn as well as some of those other programs here in Collingswood. We began to complete through our shared maintenance and custodial contract our repairs in-house in Oaklyn. Oaklyn used to be that if a piece of plumbing in the building broke, they picked up the phone and dialed a local plumber. That's a very expensive way to operate a district. We now send our own plumbers in there. That saves Oaklyn significant money while generating revenue for Collingswood, so that's a win-win. Oaklyn, this doesn't make a lot of sense out of context. Oaklyn for many years had one very small class size that went through its elementary grades. So typically in Oaklyn, there were 2 teachers at each grade level. For one class going through grades 3, 4, 5, 6, we were able to reduce a teacher. So we were able to cut our budget, reduce our budget those years. Those students who were in that small class have now been absorbed into the junior high level, so there's no additional areas to cut. So Oaklyn is back to having 2 teachers at each grade level. Chapter 78 contributions, if you're not familiar, is the state law that says all of us as public employees contribute to our health care. The Oaklyn staff, throughout those since 2012, have contributed and continue to increase contributions to their health care. So that certainly helped with the budget crisis over the last 5 years. And then, of course, each year we have some retirement or turnover. Oaklyn is a small staff. You don't have retirements every year. but we have had some over the last several years. Looking forward, we still have a 2% local tax cap in place. That's the law. The phase-in of Chapter 78, which are those contributions to the healthcare premiums. The teachers, the staff, all the staff in Oaklyn continue to pay that money, but there is no new money coming into that system. So that Chapter 78 was phased in over 4 years, so each year we could not only count on what we had last year, but an additional amount that the teachers would contribute and the administrative staff would contribute. That has now capped out, that's maxed out, so there's no new money coming into the system from that. Fluctuating and increasing enrollment and tuition, I talked about that a couple slides ago. There are very limited middle school and junior high curriculum and co-curricular opportunities in Oaklyn. I'm going to show you that in a second. And the building in Oaklyn needs upgrades. Nothing that we do through this send receive is going to change the fact that there are definite building upgrades needed in Oaklyn. Here's the process that we followed. We started discussions about this long before the 2015-16 school year. Back in 2014, the Camden County Office of Education did a preliminary study on an expanded Oaklyn Collingswood send receive. Following that, there was the need to do a more formal study, so we hired the consultants in the state who have done more studies than any other consultants in the state of New Jersey. They are the best at doing this. They completed a formal study on Oaklyn's options moving forward. Last September, a little over a year ago, that group of professionals, I think about 5 of them involved, did a presentation for the Board of Education and the community in Oaklyn. At that meeting, we took feedback from the community. Further feedback was taken by board members throughout the community, and also at, I believe it was the December board meeting in Oaklyn, we advertised for yet another board community presentation, so we took additional feedback in Oaklyn about that. Over the past several months, I have updated all of the numbers, so the numbers that the board members have seen in terms of enrollment, that you'll see on the following slides, the tuition, have all been updated to include the exact tuition, the exact numbers, the exact enrollment numbers that were in place on October 15, 2017, the tuition that we charged this year. The numbers you'll see consider likely increases. We tend to increase our send-receive tuition contracts by 2% annually, as well as our shared service contracts by 2% annually. We considered savings in Oaklyn that would allow them to pay, the Oaklyn board to pay additional tuition to Collingswood, and then certainly staffing implications, which are the most difficult part of any kind of a plan like this. Over the last several months, I worked with a committee of the Oaklyn board and the Collingswood board developing a strategy, the strategy you'll hear about tonight. We considered enrollment, tuition, both with increases, the Oaklyn budget. Those committees discussed the ideas you're going to hear about at length. And then that brings us to the present, which was last week in Oaklyn and tonight in Collingswood, and that's presentations to the Collingswood and Oaklyn boards of education and communities. All right, by the numbers. So the top number on there, obviously 17-18 is the year we're in, and there are no Oaklyn Middle School students who are coming to Collingswood, so that year doesn't count. That's just our baseline year. So 396 students currently, that's as of October 15 in Collingswood Middle School. Oaklyn, grades 6, 7, and 8 has 96 students, which means if the Oaklyn students were in Collingswood Middle School this year, there would be 492 students. Moving ahead, the next 5 years are the years that count, if the boards decide to move forward with this. Next year, this current year, we have a large 5th grade population, the largest 5th grade population we've had in Collingswood for some time. We actually have 8 sections of 5th grade, I believe, throughout the district. So that's why you see that number jump from 396 to 442. That group, if you look down the Collingswood Middle School column, that group will stay in the middle school for several years, and then you see after 2020-21, that group moves to the high school, so that's why that number drops off so drastically there. Oaklyn, you'll see their enrollment projected, and these are just the students who are currently in Oaklyn projecting that they stay. The students who are currently in Oaklyn coming over to Collingswood, or staying in Oaklyn, I should say, that's who would be in Oaklyn in the grades 6, 7, and 8. And then you see your new totals on the right side. So for this year, if everyone was in our middle school, there'd be 492 students. Projecting forward, you see the totals down the right side there. Those are the totals of 9th graders coming into Collingswood High School if we bring the 9th graders over. Now we're going to take a look at some of the tuition. You will see if you look at the 2018-19 school year, there are 24 Oaklyn ninth graders that we project would come into Collingswood next year into ninth grade. Look down to 2022-23. Those 24 students in 22-23 jumped to 46 kids. That's a 22 student difference at somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000, $15,000 a student. That's a huge number. That is a number that Oaklyn cannot absorb in 1 year. So the per pupil tuition, if we were to take the per pupil rate in Collingswood, what we charge them, the per pupil tuition over those next 5 years are listed down in the middle column there. And then on the right side is the normalized tuition. What I'm calling the normalized tuition is basically just the average tuition. If I take all those numbers from 18-19 down to 22-23, add them up and divide by 5, you get $508,997. That's the number we propose that Oaklyn pays to send its ninth graders to Collingswood High School each year for the next 5 years. That levels off those big swings in tuition numbers. So ultimately, next year, Oaklyn's going to overpay for their kids. The year after that, Oaklyn's going to overpay a little bit more. The following year, Oaklyn's going to underpay significantly. And at the end of that, assuming all the kids stay, and those numbers are right around the real numbers that come over, those students will be, those students at the end of the 5 years will be fully paid tuition students at Collingswood High School for ninth grade. Here's your middle school numbers. If the middle school students came over this year, they'd pay $850,532. The next 5 years, you see exactly the same logic there. Those are the numbers that they would pay over those 5 years. Look at 2021 to 21-22. It goes from $689,000 to $942,000 simply because of population, simply because of the enrollment. Add those numbers, 18-19 through 22-23 up, divide by 5, you get $798,883. Take that $798,000, almost $800,000, add it to that little over $500,000, and that's the $1.3 million that you're going to hear about in a second. All right. So Oaklyn, the proposal is that Oaklyn pays between $1.3 and $1.31 million. The exact number over the next month, if the boards decide to move through with this, the exact number after December will be determined based upon the real numbers at that time, but it's going to fall into that range. And Oaklyn would then send grades 6 through 9 to Collingswood High School for the next 5 years, 18-19 to 22-23. After that contract expires, the Oaklyn board and the seated Oaklyn boards and Collingswood board at that time would sit down and renegotiate that contract. It will go up after that. Collingswood will see an increased revenue of the same amount, 1.3 to 1.31 million for grades 6 through 9 over the next 5 years. Again, Collingswood will have to hire some teachers. You're getting more students. You're going to have to hire some teachers to educate those students. So after we take out expenses, after we take out the staff that we would hire, then the Collingswood net increase will come to about between $450,000 and $500,000 annually. That's what Collingswood, that's the actual money that Collingswood would walk away with, so after expenses are considered. Any building costs in there are going to be one time. I'll go over those in a second. Programs, the Oaklyn students benefit from a more diverse selection of courses and activities. I'll show you those. And Collingswood will have the opportunity to maintain or expand the programs that it offers in its schools. Oops, sorry about that. This is the difficult part. By the numbers, the Oaklyn staff, by moving the junior high school over here, would reduce 7 junior high teachers to 6th grade teachers. Oaklyn in 6th grade is still a single classroom. They're still in like our elementary schools operate in Collingswood. So 2 6th grade teachers, 1 health and phys ed teacher, 3 special education teachers, and half of a counselor. That's by the numbers in Oaklyn. Some of those staff members will be picked up in Collingswood. So we would hire a social studies teacher in the middle school, a science teacher, a health and phys ed teacher, a math teacher, a special education teacher. Right now we're looking at half of a language arts teacher. That's subject to change. We need half of a Spanish teacher to pick up the overload. And again, the counselor we're looking at right now, we're still having discussions about that. There may be a way to increase our counseling services here at our middle school as well. I met this morning with Mrs. Bolden from Oaklyn and Mrs. Wister from our high school counseling office, and we have some ideas. So there are still parts of this that we're still working out details on, but ultimately those are the staff members that we project picking up in Collingswood. A couple of people have asked about class sizes. Currently, over the next 5 years, given the enrollment that we see coming over the next 5 years in Collingswood Middle School, we have 10.84 students per staff member in our middle school. That's simply the student body divided by the number of teachers. And these are just teachers. These aren't counselors. These are strictly teachers. Grades 6 to 8 in Oaklyn today, 10.64 students per teacher. Under the new 5-year configuration, if we move the Oaklyn students into Collingswood Middle School and we add the teachers on the last page, that number goes to 11.49. Not a significant difference. What I can tell you is if we start to play with any of these numbers in here, that number will drop, which would even make it less significant. Some of the challenges, if we move the Oaklyn Junior High School over to our middle school, obviously they will be left with classrooms in Oaklyn that are empty. There will be underutilized common areas in Oaklyn, cafeteria, gymnasium, and then there would be, the most difficult one is the reductions among Oaklyn staff. CMS staffing, we would add additional staff to Collingswood Middle School. There would certainly be additional shared classroom space at Collingswood Middle School. The cafeteria is one of our challenges, how we would have the students eat lunch. I've been through the cafeteria a couple times with Dr. McMullen, Mr. Hurd. We're talking about ways to expand how we offer our students lunch in Collingswood Middle School. Hallway lockers were fine. Phys ed lockers, we'd have to add a bank of phys ed lockers for the boys and the girls. And then the number one complaint or concern I've heard more about than anything else is the traffic behind the middle school in the morning and in the afternoon. Frankly, that's an adult problem that is easily solved. If everybody stops driving behind the middle school and high school in the morning and afternoon, that probably goes away. You drop your kids off a block away, they will survive. And then there's, instead of everybody being in one place, everybody's spread out over blocks, and that problem goes away. How we get adults to do that, I'm not really sure. If we were teaching kids to do that, it wouldn't be a problem. How we get the adults to do that, I'm not really sure, but that is certainly an adult problem. We will work with the Collingswood Police on some areas and ideas for monitoring that traffic and improving. Some opportunities. Most of these are going to be opportunities for our Oaklyn students. Pre-K to 5 students in Oaklyn, we will have in place in Oaklyn are art teachers, music teachers, those special area teachers. They'll have an opportunity to meet with the students more often. Oaklyn empty space can be used to enhance some programming in the district. There are needs across not only our districts but also across Camden County for more intensive special education programs to get our students out of private facilities and into public school facilities. We have a need right here in Collingswood that we cannot, absolutely not house right now. If those classroom spaces are open in Oaklyn, we could work up a deal with either Oaklyn offering that program and us sending our students there, or Oaklyn, or us running the program in Oaklyn, renting us that space. So by having those empty spaces, we can certainly make use of them. Collingswood Middle School and Oaklyn students will enter high school with a much more common background. A lot of our curriculum throughout both districts is currently aligned, but certainly having them mingle and mix earlier and share the same curriculum and opportunities would benefit all the kids. Additional CMS, Collingswood Middle School staffing allows us to hire more teachers, additional teachers, perhaps some additional diversity. And our Oaklyn and Collingswood students will participate in co-curricular activities with their peers years earlier. Anybody who attended our middle school musical over the last weekend, as well as last year, saw Oaklyn students who are participating on stage right next to our Collingswood students in the middle school. Right now we have a limited number of Oaklyn students coming over to participate. I think that we can certainly expand that number as well, which would be good for the kids. These are some of the electives. Oaklyn currently offers a music program, but what we offer in Collingswood Middle School is music technology, a theater program, multimedia presentations program, creative writing, digital journalism, foods, tech ed 6, 7, and 8, woods and crafts, IQ. Oaklyn students right now only have the option of taking Spanish. They can take Spanish, French, German, or Latin. And in Collingswood, Oaklyn, if there's a particularly advanced academic student in Oaklyn, they can take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. They cannot really get ahead of that. They can't take Algebra 1 in 7th grade, as we have several students doing now, and preparing themselves ultimately to get into Calculus BC in high school. That's just not an opportunity that's available to them. So it certainly expands the opportunities for those students. I'm sorry. Again, the benefits of this idea for Oaklyn is it normalizes the tuition over a 5-year period, eliminating those drastic fluctuations that we will see in the years ahead. The Oaklyn junior high and middle school and high school students, 9th grade students, will have additional opportunities. Collingswood walks away with about $450,000 to $500,000 additional in revenue. Because we will be adding pupils to Collingswood Middle School and we will add some staff, we will reduce the per pupil expense in our middle school. And then again, we have our students in Collingswood and in Oaklyn working together. All right, these are the new slides. These are some of the questions that people have asked over the last week since we did this presentation in Oaklyn. Why can't Oaklyn just raise the additional money? That would be nice. Why would in the world would Collingswood want to do this? Why is this process being rushed? That's my favorite. This has been like 4 years. How can we add another 100 students to Collingswood Middle School? Wasn't it built as a 7-8 middle school? No, it was not. What about class sizes? Let's talk about that, and then counseling. All right, first question. Why can't Oaklyn just raise additional money? Oaklyn cannot just raise additional money because Oaklyn is capped at 2%, as is everybody else in the rest of the state. Mrs. Coleman and I have been to Trenton more times. We have frequent flyer miles to Trenton now, asking them for some relief from this. The answer is always the same. It's 2 letters, begins with N. The second letter is O. They will not do anything in Trenton to help us with this. Oaklyn could raise money above the 2% if it had bank cap. One of the things I should have added to an earlier slide and failed to was that Oaklyn has already used all of its bank cap, so it cannot use that. There is such a thing as going out for a second question, so Oaklyn could go to its voters and ask for more money from the taxpayers. Unfortunately, you are not allowed to go out and ask for more money from the taxpayers for items that are considered part of a thorough and efficient education. We cannot go out to a referendum next November in Oaklyn and say, we want to keep our school open. If you don't vote yes, we're not going to do math this year. Can't do that. We're not going to do soccer, we're not going to do band, we're not going to do those things, but we can't do, I'm not going to teach reading this year, sorry, because it's not in the budget. All right, we can't do that. So everything that's in this proposal is part of a thorough and efficient education. All right, why would Collingswood want to do this? This is an actual copy of our state aid printout from July 2017, this year. Notice the highlighted part. You can't read it. We'll bring it up closer. You probably still can't read it. But that number in there is $616,000. That is the number that off to the left says amount over uncapped SFRA aid. That is the amount that the state of New Jersey believes Collingswood is overfunded. That is the amount that Senator Sweeney wants to take from Collingswood and spread out among all the school districts who are underfunded. Right? Sounds like it makes sense. That is a real problem. And that is, if we do that, if we don't take some action in Collingswood to offset that number, you're going to be facing massive cuts. We cannot cut $616,000 with the pencils and crayons. That will not happen. That's going to cut into staff, and that's going to cut deeply into programs. If we don't offset that, we're going to be in trouble. Why has this process been rushed? We have investigated this process. I'm telling you, it is going on 4 years. Options investigated have been to do nothing. A complete regionalization, sending the 9th grade only, that's a popular option. Sending the 9th grade only sounds like a great idea. The problem is Oaklyn can't afford it. The only way it can afford it is to package everything into a 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade contract. We believe that to be the case. We brought in an outside firm. They did a complete study. They came to that same conclusion. That's the only way to afford any type of movement between Oaklyn and Collingswood is to send grades 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the option that you're looking at, I will never begin to tell you that it's not going to present some challenges, because it will. But that is the best, closest option we have to producing a win-win for both sides. Collingswood Junior High School house students. Why are we adding another? How can we add another 100 plus students? Collingswood Junior High housed students in grades 7 through 9 for many years. That's how the building was built. So that is 3 grade levels. According to the district audit filed with the New Jersey Department of Ed, the capacity of Collingswood Middle School is 640 students. This will still bring us to 100 below that. Student-teacher ratio. What about class sizes? Student-teacher ratio will go from just under 11 students to just above 11 students, and we're going to work hard to bring that down even a little bit more. And Additional, somebody asked a question about special education. I think the question was aimed at, are we going to send our kids who are mainstreamed, our kids who are in our general education settings, over to Oaklyn? The answer to that is no. What we are looking at a possibility of doing, and I can't promise this will happen, but it certainly is a possibility that we can build a program in-house, and by in-house I mean in-house Collingswood Oaklyn, to serve some of our students who we currently send to private facilities out of district. There are very few private facilities outside who can do a better job than what we can do in district. We just need the space to do it. So we are not sending any of our current middle school students over to the Oaklyn school, but we do have students who are placed currently out of district that we do not have the space to bring back. This may allow us to have that space and build a program. Currently, there's one middle school counselor as of October 15th. This is the counselor question for 396 students. Next year, if we do nothing but add another half a counselor, next year, I'm sorry, that number in the middle school, if we do nothing, will grow to 1 to 440 students. Under this proposal, that number would drop to about 1 to 350 students. It is nowhere near where we want it to be. I acknowledge that. But we are headed in the right direction, and that is an issue that has everybody's attention and we'll continue to work on. Next steps. So, back in October, this isn't really next, but back in October, the Joint Committee of the Collingswood and Oaklyn boards met, developed a presentation over the last month since that committee meeting for this board and the Oaklyn board and communities. November 2017, that's tonight. Between November and December, the board will take no action on this. The Oaklyn board took no action last week. Between now and December, the board will can certainly gather questions from themselves, or think of questions themselves, or gather questions from members of the community. And then both boards, we hope, will vote on this up or down next month in December 2017. If the expanded send receive is approved, each district will then build our budgets appropriately. Both Oaklyn and Collingswood are in the budget building stages right now, so we'll have to make adjustments there. Notification of staff has to happen by March. We will notify staff certainly earlier than that. And I promise you, you have my word, we will work with every staff member who is without a job to find them a job in another district. I will beat the streets. We have very, very good staff in Oaklyn. They are very talented. We will beat the streets to find them jobs. And given some of the interviews we've done recently in Collingswood and in Oaklyn for candidates coming in, I have very little concern that our staff is going to be able to blow away any other candidate. They're very good. So we will do that in April 2018. We'll submit, both boards will submit the budgets. Remember, the Oaklyn board still exists, the Oaklyn school district still exists, it just becomes a K-5 district. Summer 2018, we'll begin planning programs. Somewhere between April and summer, we will do step-up days in our middle school and have the Oaklyn students at each grade level come over. So they'll see the school in action, they'll get rid of that initial anxiety. We do that currently for our 5th graders coming into the middle school in Collingswood. We can certainly do that for the students in Oaklyn as well. September 2018, we'll plan, summers, 2018, we'll plan some open houses, tours of the middle school for our new students, and then in September 2018, we will welcome our Oaklyn students if they should join us, and we will work through any problems that arise at that point, and there will be problems that arise, and we will work through everyone. All right, and that is it. Any questions?
What's the state average class size?
Off the top of my head. Do you want?
Yeah.
Questions from? I don't know if there are any questions, but
Well, you want to
answer no. Try to answer no if there are.
you want to have all right? We can take questions specifically related to the Oaklyn expanded. And before we get started, I wanted to say that this is huge. This is like a really, really big deal. Like $400,000 to $500,000 of new revenue net to Collingswood, which is huge. The way that this works and why it makes sense is because we have economies of scale. We're able to absorb students into the 9th grade with most likely not having to hire any new staff because it's spread out over a big enough area that they can be absorbed in all of the classes we already offer. For the middle school, we're replacing, 14 teachers with 7 teachers, more or less. And those economies of scale are what makes this whole thing work. But aside from the money issues, the Oaklyn students are just really add a nice flavor to Collingswood when they come in 10th grade. And now we're going to get them in 6th grade. When 6th grade starts, we have 5 Collingswood elementary schools that all meet together in the middle school. Now we're going to have 6 elementary schools that meet in the elementary school. They're going to develop friendships and camaraderie through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I think the middle school is going to be improved. The high school is going to be improved. And I really look forward to getting a chance to vote on this next month. So with that cheerleading, does anybody have any questions for the board or for Dr. Oswald about, specifically related to the expanded Oaklyn? Let's start with.
Thank you. Dr. Oswald, one of the things, if for instance, this doesn't pass, and Oaklyn goes into being unable to afford, is it highly likely that the state or others could get involved and make us become a regional district together?
My experience with the Department of Ed is people think that the folks in Trenton have answers. The last place you will look for answers is Trenton. So what they will likely do at that point is come back to whenever that would happen. If this was asked last week at the Oaklyn meeting as well, so let me kind of go back a step. If this doesn't go through, Oaklyn does nothing, if we do nothing as 2 districts, the Oaklyn School District will eventually run out of money. At that point, the state of New Jersey will likely come in with loans. No one's ever sure how those loans are going to get paid back because we already don't have enough money to pay our bills. Now you're giving us loans. This would be like giving people loans to buy a home who couldn't afford to pay the rent. So no one's really sure how that's going to go, how those loans are ever paid back. But Oaklyn would get loans to keep its doors open. At that point, they would send in a state monitor who would come in. They would look through Mrs. Coleman's books. They would find all the waste that we have between the 2 districts. We have our auditor here with us tonight who will tell you there is no waste between the 2 districts. So they're then going to come back and put pressure on us to say, you guys need to come up with something. What do you think you're going to come up with? This is kind of it. So this is the most, I would say, the most efficient way to do this. And I think at that point you've just gone through a lot of headache and a lot of unnecessary angst, and ultimately the Department of Ed will step in. They will float Oaklyn alone, and they'll save the day for a little while, but they're not going to do that endlessly. So eventually they're going to push us to make a decision like this. What I will say, and I've said to the Oaklyn board 100 times, is that Oaklyn, more than any other district I'm aware of, has taken proactive steps to try to do the right thing. There are other districts who are in, when we got to Oaklyn, I'm telling you this is a real number. In the Oaklyn bank account, just like the checking account through which we pay bills, there was a balance of $24,000. That was it. For me, that's a lot in my checking account. For a school district, that's not a lot in your checking account. We were holding bills for months before we could pay vendors because our ultimate responsibility was to pay our staff. So that happened every month. We eventually were able to right the ship a little bit and get back on our feet. Oaklyn is not leading the parade off the fiscal cliff right now, but it's still in that parade. There are other districts that are leading Oaklyn, and there are other districts that are not doing anything like this. They're going to eventually just fall off the cliff. At that point, the Department of Ed is going to jump in and do who knows what. Those are all untested waters. We can do something here which will firm this up, or we can go to those untested waters at some point.
Which I think part of the conclusion is that so for the past 5 years, Oaklyn has been very proactive. We've developed a very collaborative relationship with shared services that by moving ahead, it allows both districts kind of control the process, where once, if it is not approved and Oaklyn does become insolvent, then we're in a position where we actually lose control to whoever in the Department of Education decides they're going to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question that at some point, if anything were to happen with Oaklyn, the Department of Ed is not going to come down and say, oh, you've had a whatever year relationship, 100-year relationship, or whatever with Collingswood, hey, why don't you go over to this district now? They're not going to do that. They're going to bring these two districts closer together to work together. We've been together for all these years, so I don't think that's even a question.
Any other board questions? Or?
I did a quick Google search to answer Clinton's question, and I don't know if this is the most recent, but the New Jersey Department of Ed 2009 report card had for 5th grade 20.6 students per class, and for 9th grade 20 students. So we're still well. That's all.
I saw a hand somewhere. Oh.
My question is, specifically local, you guys
there are, this year, there are, I went through and looked at every single classroom in the middle school according to the current master schedule. This year, there are 42 regular size, large classroom, general classroom spaces that are open throughout the day, and 55 total classroom spaces, including the smaller group rooms. We also have staff who are teaching small groups in large classrooms just because the classroom was available, so that's not a bad decision. But those groups could move to smaller classrooms. So if we were to bring over, not counting phys ed, because that's not going to be in a regular classroom, if we were to bring over 5 teachers, between 4 and 5 teachers, 4 and a half, 5 teachers, you're looking at, if every one of them taught 6 classes, which is not a given, not everybody teaches 6 classes. If everyone taught 6 classes, you're looking at 24 to 30 classrooms to take up those 55 spaces. So down to that level of how many empty spaces we have in the school, we have space. Can we go much beyond that? We can. What you saw in the middle there are peaks. I mean, right now, in terms of timing, we have a bubble of students coming into our middle school, and there's a bubble of students going through Oaklyn. Both of those numbers in the future will drop off. So you're going to land back around that 490, 500 number once that bubble gets through the middle school. We don't see anywhere in Collingswood coming all the way down to this year's kindergartners where there's that many students in a grade level. This 5th grade is kind of an anomaly.
There's no need for instruction or whatever else.
Nope. Go here and now.
So you have $616,000 which have to get reallocated by the state. So if you absolve Oaklyn, is that $616,000 going to be redistributed, or could that increase or go down? So are you looking for additional money at the end of this if they get redistributed, or could that 616 be lessened by bringing in other outside sources?
Yes, the 616, if the Department of Ed continues to reduce our state aid in Collingswood, right now they say we're $616,000 overfunded.
Because right now you're going to be showing a $500,000 profit increase. So is that 616 going to increase
No.
even more?
No, that's simply, just the state aid number based upon the state funding formula. So that really has nothing to do with any other money that we bring in. Tax money, local tax money, it doesn't have anything to do with that. So right now what we're looking at is if they were to ultimately take that 616 away, we have that 450 to 500,000 to buffer that. We're still going to be 150,000, sure, right?
But there's no opportunity where the state could come in and say, well, now you're showing a positive of $500,000.
The totally separate pots of money.
So I would assume that state aid is somehow with a function of student size, right?
Correct.
So the fact that we would then be absorbing more students, would that then mean that the state aid should be actually a little bit more than that?
Right. Makes total sense, but that's not the way it works because those students are still considered Oaklyn students. Okay. So Oaklyn gets the aid for those students. They take that aid and send it to us. Okay. All right? So they don't count as our kids. Somebody else. Thank you. That was your question? Okay. Well, right now the problem is we do every year. It's part of our budget. That's not money that's sitting in an account somewhere. That's money that we get from the state every year. That's an annual number that comes to us as part of our state aid that they claim as of today that we're overfunded.
So they give it to us and they say, oh, we gave it.
So this year they gave us 616 plus 125. It's at 741. At the last minute in July they took 125 back. So that number would be 741, is that? Yeah, 741, if they didn't take that 125 back already. So yes, they did give it to us, and then they took it back.
So what is that money being spent on that the state says it shouldn't be spent on?
Teachers, salaries, those types of things. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with what the state says should or shouldn't be spent. Back in whenever the SFRA, the School Funding Reform Act, was passed, 2009, maybe 8. The state came up with a formula that was kind of given the blessing by the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, that said this is a fair formula to fund our schools. And since that formula was put into place, they've actually never funded it. So we are funded, I believe, at 106% of what that is. There are districts that are funded at 40%. I mean, it truly is, and I shouldn't say this because I'm on camera, but it truly is unfair. Right? There are places out there that are getting funded at 40 or 50%. We're at 106%. So it's not fair to those places. It's really, really fair to us. But eventually someone's going to come along and take that money back. Your legislature, yeah, and your government.
If economy scale is how we're getting this number, why not full regionalization?
Full regionalization comes with several more challenges. When you do a full regionalization, first of all, both communities have to go out and vote in the affirmative. When we do a full regionalization, you're basing your numbers on tax rates and equalized valuations and those types of things. And my experience with a full regionalization is there's always a winner and a loser. And if you're the loser, you're not going to vote for it. The other thing that happens in a full regionalization is the Oaklyn Board of Education goes away. They then would likely send 2 members to sit on the Collingswood board, which means Oaklyn will never control its own destiny with education. Because even 2 of, I guess you probably would go back to a 10-member board because we still have Woodland. But the Oaklyn seat would go away. We would have 9 Collingswood/Oaklyn members, and only 2 of them would likely come from Oaklyn. So Oaklyn will never really have a say.
Considering where they were, is it safe to assume that the county office and the state have been apprised of all this and are generally in favor of it?
Yes. Anything else?
I know you mentioned briefly about the being able to expand the special education services by taking in Oaklyn with us. Then have you looked at like cost savings or any of the actual numbers on how it will affect or positively affect Collingswood as far as being able to provide those services in-house rather than expediting them outside? Contracting them out as we are now.
Right. Oh, what's the savings to bring the students back into? Oh, yeah. We have not run numbers on that, but I've never had a situation where we educated students in-house. Right now, when we educate students outside, not only do we pay typically exorbitant amounts, but especially if the students' needs are highly involved, exorbitant amounts. But we often have to pay, we always have to pay to bus them, so we transport them. That's tens of thousands of dollars a year, and there's absolutely no educational benefit to that. The kids don't learn anything on a bus. Typically, with the types of students that we're looking at right now, they also require nursing services. So the nurse has to ride the bus with them. That's additional expense. So there's a lot of expense involved there. Bringing them just closer to home saves money. And I don't believe for a minute that we can't educate them with at the same quality that some outside provider can do. No. Everyone in Oaklyn that would come to the middle school is within the 2-mile range. What's that? Sure.
I have a child in high school and elementary school, and my kid is
Thank you.
more thing I wanted to add on all of this is that, so Dr. Oswald's been our superintendent, if I get to meet him in his 11th or 12th year, and Beth Ann Coleman has been our business administrator for a couple years less than 10 years, and they both have been working as a superintendent and a business administrator in Oaklyn for the last 5 years. So the only reason that this is able to happen is because we've had the steady leadership in both districts, and there was a certain amount of trust that us as a board trusted the team of Scott and Beth Ann on what they came up with, and then similarly, the Oaklyn board had a similar trust, and when they put us together, we had a shared experience with like trusting the leadership, and I really truly believe that this couldn't have happened unless we had had the shared services that we've had over the last 5 or 8 years. So I just can't say much enough about how I think that this is just a really wonderful thing for both districts. So with that, I'd like to move on to introduce Mr. Robert Averso of Averso & Stewart, who is our auditor for the school. And he'll give us an update on our financial status.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go over the financial summary of where we stand as of June 30th, 2017. By the director, that's in the left-hand column. We took tax levy in $15,268,000, tuition $4,695,000, miscellaneous revenue $224,000, transfer from shared agreements, the excess $379,000. Federal aid, $92,979. Total state aid, $10,619,931. Total revenue, $31,285,099. We expended in the same period $30,951,350, or a net profit of the year $329,249. We started the year with a fund balance of $5,802,548, and we're ending with an overall fund balance $6,131,797. That number is further defined right below. What makes that up? Reserve for encumbrances, $65,000. Capital reserve, $1,137,539. Maintenance reserve, $250,000. Excess surplus, $2,016,939. That's the amount that must be put in the 17-18 budget. $2,012,729, which is the money that's put in this year's budget, and unreserved $649,095, which is the maximum we can have. We're using a lot of money to balance our budget, $2 million. It puts a lot of pressure on the board to come back every year and do that. With increased state aid in the future, that could be a challenge. That's where we stand. Are there any questions on the financials? There's no recommendations. The business office is run very well. 2 years in a row now, we've had no recommendations on the state service. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Moving through our future dates, you'll see that Monday, December 18th is our next board meeting, where hopefully we'll approve that Oaklyn, Collingswood expanded Center receive. Just so you know, we work as committees, and we have talked about this in the committees, and I haven't heard anybody say that they're against it. So for whatever that's worth, we'll be voting next month on it, but I have not heard of anybody who's against it. Under paragraph 6, we need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 23rd, 2017 regular board meeting and the November 6th, 2017 special board meeting. Could we have a motion, please? All in favor? Okay, the next thing is the unfinished business, the outdoor space ad hoc committee. And quite simply, really nothing has changed since our meeting earlier this month. What is on the agenda is paragraph 1010 of the agenda, and it's really kind of a little bit perhaps boring and anticlimactic of what we're doing. We're trying to get in order for us to do a referendum or to do a major construction project, we need approval from the state. In order for the state to be able to look at our project, we need a final eligible cost letter. In order to get a final eligible cost letter, the board has to approve sending the project up to the state. Right now, we have a project that is $13.04 million to do a variety of improvements to the district, and based on estimates on our current ratables in the town, it looks like it's going to be an average increase of $192 to the average taxpayer in Collingswood. So all we're doing today is signing or approving sending the items in 1010 up to the state so they can look at it, see the costing that we did on the project, and make sure that it's in line. We feel pretty confident that it will be in line because we have architects and engineers who have done this before and are familiar with how much things cost and are familiar with how it is reviewed by the state. The process going forward is once they send it back to us with a final eligibility cost letter, they're going to tell us what percentage of the project is paid for by state aid. At this point, not much of it is going to be paid by state aid. Our estimate is that it's going to be about $664,000 would be paid by the state, but that is totally subject to the state's review and when they give us that final eligibility cost letter. Assuming we get that letter back in the next month or so, we would finalize plans, we would finalize the wording of a question that would be put on the ballot, and then that will be approved in a future board meeting. So tonight, all we're doing is setting things up to go forward so that there can be a vote on this eventually, so that all the next couple of steps go forward, that there can be a vote on it on, what would that be, March?
Second Tuesday.
The second Tuesday in March. So the main issue that I see tonight is, should we go forward? There's a lot of questions about the merits of whether to vote yes or no, and I've heard a lot of people who have said some compelling reasons why we should go forward, and who have, actually, quite frankly, they were the impetus for this because they come to us and said, hey, this is lacking. There are a bunch of things lacking with our facilities. We would like you to improve that. Then we went through the process, and we came through, and we came up with plans, and we listened to the public, and we revised the plans, and we started out at about $22 million, and we brought it down to this $13 million after hearing input from the taxpayers. At this point, I think not going forward would be taking the side of the people who prefer not, who would vote no. Because if we don't go forward, we don't even give anybody a chance to vote. I think it is an extremely pure process to bring this. We've heard from a lot of constituents who say, we need a bunch of new things. The board has studied this. We've gotten input from all of the stakeholders who are involved, and we have come up with a plan that we think is is really good and addresses those needs. So now that we have that, is it going to pass? I have no idea. We're going to find out in March. But to not put it forward, we are basically saying, people who say no, we're not putting it forward. We're just not going to do it. I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that that's pure. I don't think that that's democratic. Some of the things that we're trying to address. Facts of the matter is we have a crumbling stadium. It's in disrepair. We need to repair it. The repairs of the stadium cost over $1 million. Our lighting is not efficient. I believe the bulbs are halogen bulbs. We can switch over to LED bulbs, which are more efficient, save energy, and are more effective. There's a problem that people have spoken about for years, that there are not enough fields. We have all kinds of levels of players, from middle school, elementary school, up through junior varsity and varsity, who want to use our fields and want to practice on them. They want to use fields on Sunday, which they're not allowed to do in Knights Park. This program addresses all of those problems, or most of those problems. We have problems that our fields are currently overused. They are grass fields, they're subject to mud and rain, and there's dents on the field, and balls hop up and down on uneven surface. We have to rest them from time to time, so we have to tell people that they're not allowed to come out, that they're not allowed to use the fields. We don't like doing that. The track is in disrepair. All of our high school students and middle school students use the fields every day in physical education classes. They're using facilities that are substandard. I happen to be familiar over the years. My kids are all graduated, but I've seen our fields, and I've seen all the fields of Colonial Conference and other high schools across South Jersey and frankly across the whole state. We're near the bottom on quality of our fields. Another issue is that the track currently is in disrepair and it only has 5 lanes. We still can have track meets, but when we have a tri-meet, meaning that Collingswood invites 2 other schools, Collingswood can only run one runner per race because there's only 5 lanes, and as a courtesy, the other 2 schools get to run 2 runners. A 6-lane track is a better idea. For field hockey crowd has talked to us for years about that they are at a competitive disadvantage by having grass fields, and just about all the successful field hockey programs have gotten to play years and years on turf, and they've been able to hone their craft on turf fields. Collingswood's had a very successful field hockey programs over the year, and they would get to benefit from it. Soccer has several problems. They don't have enough field space. There's tons of youth soccer, tons of travel soccer. There's not enough fields for them to play. In addition, the field is not a full-size field. This field would be a full-size field for soccer. Ultimately, by having 2 fields, we would address basically all of those athletic issues. It looks like my tally is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that boys and girls soccer, girls lacrosse, girls field hockey, boys and girls track and football would all use both the stadium field and the auxiliary field for their events. And aside from athletics, there's 2 other components. One is, as a school district, we are required to educate certain special education students from ages 18 to 21. We started that program. It's in its infancy. This would be, the program builds a facility that has a learning classroom for 18 to 21-year-old special education students that would be able to use the facility to help them get into the workforce. I think that this is an important idea because it's what the special education families deserve, is to have a program where the students can stay in district. Aside from that, there could be a ancillary benefit that we could potentially get some out-of-district people who pay those exorbitant fees, except we are the beneficiary of them. We're not looking at that specifically from a money motive, but because it's the right thing to do for our special education students in our district. So all of those things that I'm saying, so the process has been that this, it started with athletics. Athletic people have come to us. We don't have enough fields. The fields are in disrepair. All those problems that I pointed out have been brought to us. Then we went and we talked to all of the stakeholders from the various programs and said, if we had the most wonderful plan, what would it include? And we put that plan together, and it cost $22 million. We then got a group of about 25 people who were primarily school-related people. There was a criticism that it wasn't a cross-section of the whole town, that it was just people who were from the schools and from athletics, and that's true. But those people helped hone the ideas, and the coaches were involved, and the athletic director was involved, and we put together a plan that addressed the athletic facilities in the most economical way. Then we heard from people who were not so involved, and they said, you know what, I recognize that the stadium's crumbling, I recognize you don't have field space, but $22 million is too much. So then we brought it down to $17 million. We knocked off some things. One of the main things that we knocked off was administrative offices from the program. That brought it down from 22 down to about $17 million. Then we had World Cafe, and we had heard from about another 130 taxpayers. And again, the theme from those were, you know what, I recognize the needs that you're saying. Some people recognize them more than others, but in general, a lot of people recognize some of the ideas. But they also, my sense was that it's a little too extravagant. And based on that opinion, we took off another $3.5 million to get it down to the $13 million that we're at now. My view of the plan, and I've been involved with it, for the last 4 years, with many of the board members here and former board members, is that this is a good plan that addresses the needs. It's expensive. It's going to cost its average taxpayer $192, and it's just I get if you're against, I get if you can't afford the $192, I get if you are philosophically opposed to turf. I get a whole bunch of different reasons to be against it. But I also see that there's a whole bunch of crowds who say, this will be wonderful. This will help give students the power to achieve in the ways that they can excel at. And in our last referendum that was done 10 or 12 years ago, we addressed the arts, we addressed spin, we addressed fine arts and the chorus, and we put in a new library, and we updated all the schools, but not a penny was spent on athletics. And I don't know that really anything was spent on special education either. So now we're feeling like this is kind of the final frontier of what the district needs. If I look at our district, our library, the length, our schools, the wonderful program that we heard from the elementary schools, I would not want my kids to go to any other school but our district. However, I would like my kids to play on some other schools' athletic fields. And I wish that we had a better 18 to 21-year-old program in our district. This is the final frontier of things that we need to make, in my view, the district that's deserving of our students. And next, I'm going to vote in a couple of minutes to move this forward. And in March, I'm going to vote, again, yes on this. And I recognize that there's people in this room who are going to vote no, but I don't think that tonight is that we're going to decide all the reasons to vote yes or all the reasons to vote no. But what I would hope is that most people will agree that, you know what, there are certainly, I might be against it, I'm for it, but unless you put it to a vote of the town, the time has come for the town to get a chance to weigh in and say, do it or don't do it. And we won't find that out until March. And like I said, I think it's undemocratic with all the input that we've had, and I think this is a well-developed plan, I think it's undemocratic to not go forward at this point. So, that's the, before we, I think the next point is questions, but is there anything that a board member wants to add to the update that I just gave? Did I miss out on anything that's an important point?
I just wanted to say, I was actually going to say something similar to what you did about that. I can appreciate that we have members of our community that feel that they didn't have a chance to give input early enough in the process and feel frustrated by that. But I can also appreciate that there are members of our community who have been working hard and put a lot of thought into this particular proposal and what it can do, what they believe that it can do for our kids, and that's what I think that the point that you made about it's not really fair to take the option of letting people say, let us know whether they would vote yes or no by just shutting this down altogether, that we're taking away the voices of some members of the community by doing that. But I do think that moving forward with this, it's very important for us as a board, now that we have more of a final proposal, that we make it very, very clear to the members of the community what's in the proposal, why we think that this is something that would benefit our kids, and we make sure that we are reaching out to all members of the community, whether they have kids in the district or don't, and that's kind of our job for the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
I have some comments on this, President. As the elected officials are charged with the responsibilities to provide the operation of the Collingswood schools, I believe we have done our due diligence regarding the outdoor enrichment bond proposal. It's time for this to move on from a proposal to actually a bond and referendum. This is evidenced by over 5 years of work on the project, which have involved many stakeholders. Most recently, an ad hoc committee of the board met with various stakeholders and worked with our project designers and engineers. Additionally, an open community forum was held on April 5th with members of the community attending. We recently hosted conversations with 135 members of the community present, and I believe this combination of formats has enabled the board to engage the community and determine the scope of the project will make the most sense. For all these processes, I think, in my mind, 3 themes have emerged: issues of safety, the need for recreational space, and the enhancement of our academic programs. Regarding issues of safety, we have witnessed the rapidly declining condition of the stadium after approximately 85 years or so, years of use. It is no longer feasible to make repairs to the structure. We need a modern stadium that is ADA accessible and provides a safe viewing environment for all those who attend the sporting and ceremonial events held there. We also need to improve the safety of the grass field and replace it with an artificial surface that more adequately addresses the needs of the stadium. Additionally, we must ensure the safety of the playground areas at our elementary school and replacement of rubber mold surfaces with cord rubber surfaces will allow us to do just that. I realize there also exists a need for additional and enhanced recreation equipment. This will need to be built into the annual school district budget. Regarding space, we've seen the expansion of athletic teams throughout the district and community. One example this past year was the creation of a freshman softball team due to student interest. We've also seen the growth of community recreation programs with whom we've partnered for many years to provide space. By providing artificial turf on the stadium field and replacing the grass on the softball field, we will increase the opportunities for greater utilization of these spaces to meet the recreational and athletic needs. Regarding 18 to 21-year-old program, it's important that we locally address needs for the creation of this program for our special needs students. By providing a locally based program instead of sending students out of district, we build relationships with our community employers and organizations to greatly benefit the program and population. I have heard and read comments in many places indicating that resources should be directed to other areas, particularly those of a more academic nature, instead of fields for athletic and recreation use. Research into child development and learning clearly demonstrate that students learn in a variety of ways. Some learn in the classroom, some learn in a lab, a studio, organizations, activities, job, home, and yes, some learn in athletics. Athletic participation has been shown to be highly beneficial in preparing students in 21st century skills and helping them develop teamwork skills, a much valued skill in the world of work. Additionally, research also supports the benefits of exercise and athletic activity at all ages as part of a well-balanced, healthy lifestyle. Also, I want to point out that at last spring's senior academic awards ceremony, many of our highest achieving students were also engaged in an array of athletics. Some of them even stood up on stage in their uniform, having just come from competition. Finally, athletics has long been a source of the development of community pride and spirit, an important aspect for our schools and communities. So in conclusion tonight, I would like to say, after much review and numerous proposal plans, I believe we've achieved a design that is the most responsible financially for the community. I urge my colleagues on the board to endorse and support the program so we can proceed with a March bond referendum, which in the end will allow the voters of Collingswood, after many years of conversations and proposals, to finally make the decision to approve it or not. Thank you.
Any other board members? Anything you want to add to that?
Sure, I have a couple questions. Do we have any other numbers or better estimates on how much the special election will cost? Is it still between 10 and 20,000? We're not sure until the number.
Yes, I contacted High Township, and theirs was about 13,000 2 years ago.
Okay. And if this was put to a vote, say in May, in the primary, how much would that cost us to put it on the ballot?
That I don't know.
After we met, it was 2 weeks ago, and we saw the straw poll and how people are most likely going to vote, it looks like this is going to pass when we get to agenda items. But my last ditch effort here is to push this to May to give us an additional 2 months to look into any unanswered questions that we do have going forward. I feel that if this goes to a vote currently, I don't think it will pass, unfortunately. And I also think that we don't have a backup plan right now. I really don't think we do. So what happens if this doesn't pass? Where do we go?
I don't know that we can add it to the May ballot.
You can't ask me. I don't
Yeah, I
believe.
mean, if I knew you were going to bring it up something, I would have researched it.
Okay.
I don't know that we can add it to the primary ballot. I know we can add to we have 4 special election dates.
Right.
So I would have to check with the attorney. I don't know if we can add it to the primary ballot.
That's, I think, the biggest outstanding question, besides some of the design questions I have, is what is our backup plan if this fails in March? It has to be repaired in some way or another, and it's not in our budget to repair it at this time. And that's my concern, is the spending, which is better, that's only 13 and not 20,000, if that's going to be the real number. But if we don't have a backup plan before we approve to submit this to the state, we could be looking at some financial issues further than what we saw tonight with the 5 years down the road. So at this time, I would urge us not to vote yes and to table it until next month, have further discussions.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess I have some concern about the language of saying it's undemocratic, basically, to vote no. Because, in fact, this is a democratic process. We've all been elected here by individuals that trust our opinions. And so, the vote is saying, yes, I agree that every option, every thing that we could possibly do to minimize the taxpayer's impact has been exhausted, and that's just simply not the case. So to say it's undemocratic is, I feel like, frankly, I think it's almost like a little bit of a dig, and not every option has been exhausted. There's lots of things we haven't explored. We haven't explored what regionalization would look like and spreading the tax rate over 2 or even 3 districts would look like. We haven't explored fundraising. We haven't explored grant writing. We haven't explored utilizing potentially Oaklyn's property. They have a very large property in the back that potentially maybe we could use for additional practice space. I feel like there's lots of things that we haven't explored at all. We haven't explored of what that tax increase could potentially do to the diversity of the school district. The higher the rates go, the less diverse our community is going to be, and I would argue that a diverse student population is extremely beneficial to all of our children. And so we haven't had a lot of these conversations that, frankly, I think are extremely important for us to have. I feel like we should have a lot more conversations about a lot of the issues that do exist that this poses for our community.
paragraph 7 of the agenda. This is a public comment section. Please stand and state your name and address and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. The purpose of this public comment section is to discuss items that are listed on the agenda. And we're going to have another public comment section at the end where we talk about other items. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yes, would you come to the mic, please?
Yeah, would you please? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Donald Nigro. I live on Fern Avenue in Collingswood. I applaud you for those meetings that you had back in October. I attended the October 3rd one, and I thought it was very informative, and the exchanges were very worthwhile. I did pose a question at the end of the meeting asking about documentation for the alternative of repairing the stadium. From what I understand, it costs $1.2 million, and about every 20 years the stadium needs some significant repair. And I requested that that documentation for that those repairs, if that could be posted online. And I believe, Mr. President, you said that at least I got feedback from you that I thought you were going to see that they were posted. I still, looking at the website, I don't see anything about this $1.2 million alternative. And in the interest of democracy, what I would encourage, if you do go to a vote with this, is that you also make clear to the public that there is this $1.2 million alternative to repair the stadium. Several weeks ago, I attended a brief tour of the firehouse and the police station, and I saw incredible needs there and a project that very much, I think, has to get done. But as I learn about this project, and while it has been scaled back, it strikes me more so as a collection of nice-to-haves rather than real needs. And I think it's important if we're going to go forward with public consideration of this project of collection of nice-to-haves, that we also have full disclosure on what at the core could really address the pressing need. And I guess I'll just close with asking, unless I am overlooking it being posted on the website, again, could it please be posted, the information about the $1.2 million plan to repair the stadium, because I think that's worthwhile sharing with the public.
There's not really much to propose. $1.2 million to repair content.
You must have a letter or something from a consultant, any sort of documentation that you have on the $1.2 million plan.
Oh, Wayne Rossi, 114 East Palmer Ave. I really think that, you know, the admission that you don't know if this is going to pass, and what Jay said about not having a fallback plan is really short-sighted, because especially given that if any of the current plans to revamp the federal tax code go through, it's going to put a severe burden on a lot of people in this town and in our state through the change in how taxes are deducted. You know, I really don't. I don't think that this will pass. I really don't. I do understand that there's a need to repair the stadium, and I just remember that when this was originally presented, there was presented an option 1, which was $3.9 million. I looked at it. It doesn't do all of the fancy things that this does, but I really strongly have to encourage the board that I know as a fact that a public question does not have to be a yes or no on a single plan. And I think that if there was a $3.9 million plan and a $13.1 million plan on a referendum, that the $3.9 million plan would pass and the $13.1 million plan wouldn't pass. And it could be that's why you don't want to include it, but I really think that that's going to be the reality, that that's the best thing that you're going to be able to do. And if you really believe in most of the things that are in this project, and the safety and the rebuilding, which I totally agree with and understand, that the safety and getting, like, I believe the $3.9 million plan included turf, and it addresses many of these things without the reorientation, without the extra buildings, etc. That's a more realistic plan, and I think it would be more serious, and frankly, I think it would be more democratic to let people tell you that where they prioritize this. And if the people in Collingswood really do prioritize this at $13.1 million, then they'll vote for it. But I don't think that's the case. And I really would strongly encourage the idea of the ballot being structured to allow for either, because and if it's structured like that, there's nothing that prevents someone from voting both the $3.9 and the $13.1 million options. So I really think that that's the way to go forward that would actually address these things, and whereas I just don't see this going forward. Thank you.
Sarah McLaughlin, I'm on 719 Everett Ave. So kind of building off of what Wayne said, what really needs to be understood by the board is that everyone agrees that something needs to be done, right? No one's saying this is ridiculous, we're not spending any money on this. We all agree that the fields are unsafe, the stadium is unsafe, that it's not ADA accessible. We get it. We're more than happy to have tax money go into fixing this to make it safe and make it playable for the students. What needs to be done, when it was talked about that due diligence was not done, according to the municipal code, there is a regulation that as soon as a preliminary site plan is done, an environmental impact statement needs to be completed, which includes soils, waters, runoffs, noise, predictions, traffic, all that kind of stuff. None of that was done. So we have a plan in place right now. There was no environmental impact statement. So if I'm understanding that correctly, that's a violation according to the municipal code. There are, again, some of you may know by this point that I live right next to ground zero at this point, and this is going to affect my property. The drawings that have been presented don't take into consideration buffers that are written into municipal code also. So really, there's a lot of stuff. There's environmental factors, there's zoning regulations, there's buffering that hasn't been considered. So ultimately, asking the board asking for the residents to sign up for a tax hike for the benefit of a pretty small percentage of the population is fairly short-sighted, especially now with all of this talk of bringing younger Oaklyn kids into the district. It's going to benefit I support bringing the kids in. I think it'll benefit the kids, but now you're dealing with more kids. How are they going to adapt into the fields? What are they going to need? It's two projects that are big going on at the same time that need to be considered, and maybe deal with Oaklyn first, bring them in, and then say, okay, after a year, we may need more space, more than we need a $13 million stadium. So I don't think that they should be handled separate from each other. I think the board really needs to consider them both at the same time. The future for the federal and state taxes is completely unclear, but we know that they're likely to go up for all of the residents. Collingswood has another looming tax increase with the plan for the new police and fire station. At some point online, there was a rumor that seniors would be exempt from the tax increase, which is important for everyone to understand that that's not true. So this is going to affect senior citizens on a fixed income. It's going to affect people who make minimum wage. It's going to affect people who rent that can barely pay their rent. And again, floating around online, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's just a cup of coffee a day. Oh, it's this amount of money a day. We have to stop assuming that everyone has that much money to give for a big project like this. So I feel like we're being asked to pass the plan right now because it's been around for 5 years. That's basically what I've been hearing. It's been around, it's time to do it, it's time to do it, it's time to do it. Again, what happens if it doesn't pass? Where's the money coming from to fix the stadium? Because if it doesn't pass, and I know that there are people on both sides, I know people are more on the side of it not passing, then how is the school going to pay to fix the stadium? So by putting it up for a vote, you're forcing residents to pick an all or nothing scenario, like Wayne was saying. Like maybe we'd be fine with 3.9 million and not fine with 13.4, but we're not being given that opportunity. At this point in time, with the political climate the way it is, it just seems too much to be asking people to spend $13 million when really the stadium needs to be fixed up and the fields need to be made safe and the stadium needs to be safe. So I would encourage you to, while you're considering this next move with Oaklyn, also realize that the changes of the district and the schools are going to change once those kids merge into this district. So consider that and then consider the stadium.
I'm Insane, 410 West Franklin Avenue. I graduated class of 2017 from Collingswood High School. I ran cross country. My entire time in high school was captain 2 years. I ran track throughout my entire time in high school. I filmed the football team. So when it comes to people who have been on that field and in that stadium, you are going to be hard-pressed to find someone who has spent more time than me on those athletic fields. And quite frankly, a $13 million stadium would not have positively impacted me any more than having functioning fields. While I am the first person who will say that these fields need to be brought up to standards and they need to be safe and that athletics in school is important, there is no way in which we need to be spending an extra $9 million more than what is needed to make these fields functioning for the students. Students do not care what the stadium looks like. Students do not care what the track looks like. Students care how they're doing, how they're performing, their teammates, camaraderie, and putting all that they have on the field every single day. That drive that is put into students through athletics is not affected by the stadium that they play. Their fans will be there either way. It does not matter. The important things that I always instilled in my team were hard work, determination, and resilience to do anything you could to improve yourself no matter the obstacles in your way. And here, I think we all need to consider that. Because we are not getting a proposal that's considering of everyone. I do not think we have worked hard enough to hear every person's opinion and to consider all options. In the time I have spent in this room, I have heard multiple options of how this proposal could be changed to the benefit to include the opinions of more people in this town, to be a more democratic proposal, to provide more options for this town to consider. And we have not considered that. We have not put a proposal in place that puts in what every person in this town is thinking and considering. So to say that we are going to vote on one $13 million proposal is not a democratic ideal. It is not a way to hear what all the people in this town want. Because I don't think a single person in this town will argue that these fields need to be brought back up to regulation, but I do believe there's a very solid argument to be made that these fields do not need a $13 million stadium.
Hi, Tim Farrow, 911 Park Avenue. whether this is democratic or not, that's not really what the question here is. The vote is democratic. Whether these representatives on the board support it or not, it's their right to have that opinion. But this is democratic too. This discussion, it's democratic. And I'm glad that we're all having it. So I don't think we need to pit against whether being opposed to it or in favor of it is democratic or not. This is a democratic discussion, and it's one that Collingswood is known for having, and we're the residents that care about our town. That's what we want. When it comes to this decision about how much and the 3.9 whatever it is, or the $13 million package, the question is long-term versus short-term. Short-term is much easier to plan than long-term. That's the nature of the game. It's a lot easier to say, what can we do short-term to fix the problem that we have? And that much cheaper plan definitely will fix the short-term problem. But you have to consider, if we only vote on that plan that's the $3 million or $4 million, close to $4 million plan, that field is not being reoriented so that it can fit regulation soccer at the county level, so that it can fit regulation track at the county level. So if we go forward and we fix the stadium and we have a turf field where it is now, we don't have those things. And then if we have 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, then we're spending this same amount plus 3 or 4 million. That's not responsible. That's not financially responsible on behalf of this town. So we can't just say, well, which is the cheaper plan, let's go with that. What's going to fix right now what the problem is? We have to look forward and determine where is this town going in the future. And we got to realize that we can't waste money by deciding we're going to change the plan in another 5 years. That's part of the consideration too. It's not easy, but that's really what this is about. It's about long-range planning. And this by far is the plan that meets all those interests. Whether you want to just fix the fields or whether you want the fields to go forward in terms of expansion of athletics. This is what accomplishes both those goals.
Jen Rossi, 114 East Palmer Avenue. Glad to see you guys all here tonight. Okay, so I did some market research that I usually do for my day job. I won't charge you $200 per hour, I usually charge. So about the two options on the ballot, I was able to find that Kingsway Regional and Warwick Township did such a thing in March of 2016. They included two options, a vote yes for one or both, vote for one, no for one or both. Their max plan was for $12 million. Theirs did end up failing in 2 elections, but it gave the people of the town the opportunity to show where their priorities lie. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the legacy of Collingswood field hockey, because so I looked across soccer, football, track and field, lacrosse, softball, baseball, and field hockey. These would be the sports played in the stadium. I looked at the last 7 years of Collingswood's Hall of Fame record ceremonies. That's 99 students total, 49 of the boys, 50 of the girls. Many of the students who received awards continue to play their sports at the collegiate level. I would like to point out that over 70% of these athletes were from our girls' teams. So the girls who played field hockey took home significantly more awards and were likely to continue to play field hockey in college. So I'd like to take a look at the stadium surface as being optimal for field hockey. Scientific reasoning here. So better field conditions are needed. I was looking at pictures of the stadium from 1955. It couldn't hold grass then either. While I see the benefit of an artificial turf field, that what it could bring to Collingswood's field hockey program, I feel that the environmental and health concerns should make us looking more forward to the future, not necessarily what everybody else is doing. So what I did was I looked into what the Olympics did for golf, because basically it's the same type of surface, same kind of ball rolling is required. At the Rio Olympics, golf was played on a zoysia grass. I don't know if anybody in town has zoysia in their lawn. I had to mow mine 3 times this year. I didn't have to water it. So, like I was advocating before, that if this plan goes forward, I'm hoping that we're using the best options. And to also bring up that when Hammond Field did their successful project, they did have a steering committee of experienced members of the community. So I'd like to advocate that if the board decides to go forward, they make some kind of commitment to the people of town, that there will be an oversight or a steering committee as well. I think that would really help put a lot of people's minds at ease with a vote that would go forward, and again, to include 2 options on the ballot. Thank you.
Sue Verzella, 117 Curtis Avenue. I have some questions and I have some comments. Some of those questions have already been answered. One was regarding whether the special election needed to be a separate standalone election or whether it could be a question included on a general ballot. So far we have an estimate of $13,000 for a special standalone election. We have no estimate for including this question as a local question on a general ballot. I believe that is allowed because in my many years of voting, I have voted for local questions on the general ballots. Earlier, a teacher spoke about moving student goals along incrementally. Could this project not be broken up into smaller projects that could be handled according to need, prioritized, instead of doing everything all at once? This is not a short-term versus long-term question. This has the long game in view, but it also has the tax burden and the cost to the residents in view. Thank you, Mr. Connor, for answering my question about whether alternative funding resources have been investigated. Apparently not all of them have. Could this decision be delayed at least until we know the impact of the impending federal tax reform bills? We could be losing our property tax deduction from our federal filings. Many rely on this deduction to make their federal taxes manageable. An additional tax burden at this time could tax many residents, particularly those on fixed incomes, right out of their homes. The projected tax increase for this project also has to be considered in conjunction with the borough's projected plans to construct a new public safety facility and to relocate the Public Works Department. We do not yet know if or how much those projects will affect our taxes. While I believe that living in a democratic society means that all share in the cost of services that benefit all citizens, I also believe that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Chicarelli, and I live at 712 Colford Avenue. I have a couple of questions, a couple of comments, and a personal statement, so bear with me. Speaking on behalf of the competitive edge that the turf fields will bring, I do have some environmental concerns. I work in a district that we compete against Collingswood, sports. We tend to, unfortunately, I'm a Collingswood person, but beat Collingswood in these sports, and my school district plays on all grass fields. Those students, just like our Collingswood student athletes, do go on to pursue college scholarships for their athletic ability and can compete on the collegiate level despite playing on grass. Another thing that I would like to bring up, speaking From what Tim said about looking at the long term, I'm a parent of 3 children in this district. My students have gained tremendous achievements through the Collingswood School District. I have really appreciated all of the things that their teachers and extracurricular advisors have done for them. This year, my 2 daughters participated in band and color guard. Since the sport or color guard began, I paid a $175 student activity fee. I spent $300 and something for them to go to band camp. I paid a $10 admission fee to go see them at many competitions. And they also were in the play, the musical that just went on. And I'm already looking at spending approximately $700 since school began for their extracurricular activities. They were asked to sing in a choir event at the Flyers game, and I couldn't afford it because it was a $50 fee per child. My 8th grade student had a class trip to New York. I also told her that would have to wait. It was an additional $100. Looking long term at a $192 average increase in my taxes is already a setback for my family. So I'd like you to consider the impact that it's going to have on other families who want to give their children the best opportunities that they can get and may financially not be able to. I do agree with what you said. I wish there was an option for the 3-point whatever stadium repair. I do agree we need to repair our stadiums, make them accessible for all. I have a question, maybe it can't be answered, but moving to the Oaklyn thing, if we merge with Oaklyn, somebody had asked about using their school for special ed. Could we put the 18 to 21-year-old program there? And could we possibly, I don't know what the field space is in Oaklyn, but possibly use fields there? That's pretty much it. Thank you for listening to me, and if you can answer that, I appreciate it.
My name is Amy Roy. I live at 701 Everett Avenue. I frankly bought that property because it was so we love all of the activity. We like to be right in the center of it. So I want to start by saying that I'm not here because I'm opposed simply because I'm a neighbor. I am here specifically to raise a concern for the entire community about one specific piece in this project that it does not appear due diligence has been done in researching. Specifically the use of LEDs. I was unaware until tonight that LED transition has been happening inside the schools. So I'm grateful that I learned that this evening. The stadium project was absolutely my impetus for being here tonight. Exposure, I work in the field of lighting and light therapy. So this is my work, this is what I study. I study its effects on people every day. Exposure to LEDs for as little as 20 minutes has a measurable effect on physical health, sleep cycles, focus, brain function, and something as simple as increased migraines. For anyone with autism, seizure disorders, or any other neurological disorder, that time of exposure with an effect is reduced. Considering the fact that our students and staff spend literal years of their lives under these lights, the effects long-term on the community as a whole is multiplied exponentially, and that cost is real in health services, in missed work, in additional needs and support for students that need support within the classroom. With regard to the stadium project specifically, I read a statement that someone else had received that, and I'm paraphrasing, that
towns, cities, counties all over this country that have gone to LEDs that are now retrofitting and removing them because of those costs. The cost to retrofit and return to something other than LED is enormous. I'm happy to provide anyone on the Board of Ed or anyone in the community with studies that verify this information. I'm happy to serve as a resource for anyone with any questions, and I would just encourage that before you put it to a vote, to even move forward, you do the due diligence that's required of the environmental studies, and you put it out to the community so that everybody knows that something as simple as lighting has a long-term effect on their lives here, the lives of their children, their families, their neighbors, the community in general. Thank you.
Good evening. I guess I don't have to test the microphone. My name is Crystal Ward, and I live at 325 Newton Avenue, about a half a block from the existing football stadium. And I have to say, I've been a homeowner here in Collingswood for 11 years now. Prior to that, I was a renter for about 4 years. And this is the first time in my adult life that I've ever gotten involved in any public activism. And the reason I came tonight is because my neighbors alerted me to this discussion topic that was happening here at the board. I want to say I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it, and primarily I'm opposed to any public bond referendum that would have an increase on our property taxes. In my professional life, I don't work in lighting or civil engineering, but I work in corporate finance as a finance audit manager for a major corporate 500 company. So I do understand finance very, very well. And at this time, this evening, we learned that because of that sharing agreement between the Oaklyn and the Collingswood School District, that we would have an approximate $500,000 a year surplus, and over 20 years that equates to $10 million. So I'm just wondering, after all of the commentary I've heard this evening, are there any other options that can be explored to bring this project within a budget limit that could be covered by that surplus to avoid any kind of bond referendum or tax increase for the residents of Collingswood? I myself have no children, and I have no plans to have children. But I am a firm believer in a good quality public education. And I think that we can all agree that we do have a very good quality of education here in Collingswood. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having a discussion about absorbing into our school district the Oaklyn School District. And I also know from being a longtime resident and homeowner here that our property values are very strong, and they are even increasing. So we have a very strong real estate market here. We don't need a $13 million state-of-the-art, highfalutin sports complex in order to increase our property values to attract additional homeowners. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to future meetings where more detailed and transparent information about this entire project will be shared with all residents, because I don't think it's right that it's only discussed and information shared at a very high level at these small meetings. I hope that more information, more detailed information will be shared, and that voters are allowed to voice their opinion and also share their thoughts and cast their vote. Thank you.
Good evening, David Ralston, 903 Park Avenue. I frankly was not planning on saying anything tonight, but one thing that I'm really frankly tired of hearing is that this is some closed process, that this has been done behind closed doors, that this has been done in the dark, that there's no transparency. This is an issue that's been talked about for well over 5 years. It's been on board agendas for all that time. It's been in the retrospect. It's been in New Jersey Pen. It's been on Facebook. It's on Twitter. It's everywhere. So if you haven't heard about it, I'm sorry that we didn't come to your door and hand you a flyer. Okay? But this has not been done in private. This has not been done behind closed doors. All right? It has been an open process. If a board member disagrees with you, that doesn't mean they're not listening to you. It just means they disagree with you, much like you disagree with them. That's fine. Overall, I would say, as most of you know, I am in favor of the project. You know, you stated very clearly, I've heard many people compliment the academics in town, and in fact, I think we have outstanding world-class academics in Collingswood, and we have the board to thank for that. We have outstanding teachers, staff, administration in this district, and we're very thankful for that. The reason for that is because we have put some facilities to the side for many, many years, as we've discussed tonight. So I don't see any problem in addressing that now. I understand there's a cost to it. This clearly is not free. I understand that there's tax bill issues that may happen. But we can't continue to push items off, hoping that a solution will be presented to us rather than being proactive and seeking the solution ourselves. If this board decides that they now, and the one thing I would say is there's been a number of very valid questions that have been brought up tonight. And I believe, as a board, you need to address all of them. I don't think that the referendum being voted down is a given in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So, you know, the questions, I believe, very valid questions that even have me thinking a little bit about the project. So please address those questions and make sure everybody's comfortable with them over this time. Putting this off any further, though, is not a solution. Okay, this is, we've, you know, I left the board a year ago, and we were close to ending. We've pushed this off a number of times. There's been 3 interest rate increases since then. This project has only gotten costlier over that point in time. It's only going to be more costly if you continue to push it off. So if you truly believe that it's going to be voted down, I would recommend just scrap it, go back, do the repairs that are necessary, and then if everybody in town wants to deal with the future 5 years from now, then that's on them. But this was always modeled to be a 20 to 25 year solution, not a 3-year solution, and then go back and say, okay, well, we have to do this all over again. Thank you.
Joseph Finella. The $13 million in Beth Ann would probably be best, would cost about an additional $845,000, $850,000 a year in debt service.
And
Back of the envelope, that's what I got.
I don't have the tax calculation in front of me, but I can write it for you.
So, the debt service this year by the document gave was $1.273 million. Right? And all that was money that was, every bit of your debt service was voted on. Okay. So, people get to vote on these things. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. But the idea that you don't want to have any vote is kind of ridiculous. You have municipal debt service of $3.075 or $0.74 million a year, and you don't vote on any of that. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. Don't tell them to. Don't make any proposals. It just doesn't make sense not to do something. Our facilities are not at the bottom of the barrel in our conference. They're old. They were built when my father was in junior high school. And the track was updated 25 years ago. I don't know, 30, I'm trying to remember. It's time to do something. If these people would like other alternatives, maybe you have to go back once again. Right? But you have to do something because we're the only community around here of our contemporaries that doesn't have public fields. We have the luxury of Knight Park. We don't make any changes or alterations to it. We just cut the grass and line the fields. Quite frankly, we need to pull out of Knight Park, and I think 2 fields would be nice. Some people don't want to pay for that. That's their opinion, and they can vote no. But I hear a lot of doomsayers, I guess is the best way I can say it. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. But hell, give them more options. But do something and don't drag it out much longer, because it's been going on since almost 3.5 years. It's time to fish or cut bait. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is George Teixeira. I live on 803 Colford Ave. I have a couple questions. One question is, you say it's short on fields. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your students while you're doing this construction? What's your timeline on the construction? Because you have summer programs that go over there. Because I live right there, I know that you have summer programs going on there, and you have the 4th of July fireworks. You know, all that. So what do you
that practical consideration is just that it would start on July, after the 4th of July fireworks, and
hopefully, exactly. What if construction projects
I'm
never?
not going to be here telling that anything is
Exactly.
certain. It's going to be done.
So what are you going to do with those students?
And we're going to do this. Our kids will be inconvenienced for a year, and
So
they're
you're
going to have to use other
inconveniencing
school
students.
districts. And others, Haddon Township played all their home football games.
We're not
in
Haddon
Collingswood.
Township.
No, but they had construction to their field, and they borrowed our field. They've offered us to use their field while we're under construction. So
Thank you very much.
There's going to be inconvenience.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Can I have a quick clarification? Because the 3.9 million has been brought up a few times. What that fixes one field, and it puts turf on it, or it puts turf
Turf's
on
one
it?
field.
Turf's the one
Harrison
field.
Stadium, it doesn't.
Harris
that's
is
priority.
the
And so when we're talking about the stadium, we're talking about where people are sitting. That's only one part of the part, that is only one part of the athletic complex that has been considered unsafe or not optimal, correct? That it's a big stadium grandstand, but then there's the fields, and the 3.9 would fix one field, but it doesn't fix the problems with there being holes in the track, or the track being old, or any other parts of the fields, correct? So it doesn't solve all of the field problems.
Correct.
Can I just make one clarification? Someone up here, a young lady from Everett Avenue, said that seniors are not exempt from the tax increase. That is incorrect. I take a great interest in senior projects and senior rules and regulations for some reason. But there's a senior freeze program in the state of New Jersey. You have to apply for it, you have to qualify for it. And if you qualify for it, your taxes are frozen at that point in time. You do not pay additional taxes. So the fact that seniors, I'm sorry.
It's not the same thing.
Could you wait till I finish? Thank you. So the fact that you're a senior citizen does not mean you're going to be paying these taxes. You could, but you have the opportunity to freeze your taxes. So if you do that, you will not pay the increase. Thank you.
And there's income limits on that too. There's income limits on that too.
Right, so that's not the same thing. I wanted to clarify for the general public that thinks that seniors are exempt from this tax. The Board of Education has no authority to say seniors don't have to pay this tax. And the freeze is there, doesn't count for everything from what I have heard, right? It is not an easy thing to navigate. So to even use that as a fallback is irresponsible.
So given that, even if all the seniors are exempt, that's great for the seniors. No, hang on. So where does that other money come from? That means that 192 average is just boosted up for everybody else, right? It's got to come from somewhere. No, so where's it come from?
State program.
Excuse me?
It's a state program.
The state refunds the seniors.
Okay.
It's not something that's
Okay. So just one more question. That 192 average, so that's an average. Do we know what the maximum is? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be average. Maybe
Depends on your assessed value compared to the other assessed value.
I get that, but do we know, we figured out the 192 average. Did we figure out what the maximum is?
$400.
Is that so?
400 was 22 million.
So,
No,
so,
it all depends upon your assessment on your house. I already did mine.
so my tax could increase by $400, not
Right.
192.
Well, so the assessed home value is $229,150. So if your home value is twice that, then yes,
Right.
it's twice that.
So $400. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so now, since we act as a,
Can I take them about the tax freeze?
sure.
Because I've done it 3 times for 3 individuals. It is never guaranteed. You fill it every year. You pay your taxes when you pay your taxes. You get a check at the end of the year. A lot of the seniors have to pay that money up front. They don't have that money. So it's not like their taxes are less each quarter. They pay what their taxes are for the whole year. At the end of the year, and I'm sure you know this, the state sends you a check. So if they don't have that money quarterly, they can't pay their taxes. It is never guaranteed. It has been stopped for people with disability over the past 10 years, where it's cut out. So I think telling our seniors that, I know very well the tax freeze. Like I said, I've done it for 3 people. So I just think that more information about the tax freeze for the seniors, and the people who are not aware understand that these seniors pay it up front. Their taxes are not stopped at $7,000 and then they pay 7. They pay 10. They get 3 back at the end of the year. So they have to have that money in order to pay it.
And just to be clear, it was never represented by the Board of Ed, which I don't know where that information came. We never represented ourselves to say that if, in support of this program, you will be guaranteed.
Right, and
that
I'm
you're
sure
senior.
you are.
So I just want to
I'm
make
going by
that
what
clear.
Mr. Stout
What
said
was
about
brought
what
up
the freeze is.
at the numerous meetings is for our seniors, because we identified that some of our seniors, this will be a burden.
Correct.
There are programs out there. Never at any time was it delivered that you would be exempt from this. So that was misinformation. I don't know where that information came from, but we put the program out as a support for our seniors with the option, if you need any additional information, you could go to Borough Hall. It will be spoken, like we'll walk you through it, but it was never touted as seniors would be exempt. So I just really want to make that clear, because.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I was simply referring to what Mr. Stout was saying about how that program works, and that because most people do not know, and unless you're over 65 or disabled, you would not know how that program, why would you need to know that program?
But I do believe we said if there's any,
I don't have a question. I wasn't here, so I don't know. I'm simply commenting as to what was just
Yeah,
said
I think it
right
was
now.
just some comments that were made that, I think were just misleading to what the board.
I have a
was
95-year-old grandfather and mother who live in town, so, so
I
it
know.
concerns me. All right, thank you.
Also, to be clear though, that check comes out in July, and we always encourage our seniors when they get that check to set it aside for their bill that comes in August. So it is timed where they do receive it before the tax bill comes out in August. And we tell them when we fill out the bill in February or March, when they receive their check, we encourage them to save that or as their taxes go up.
Hi, I'm Matthew Wilson. I'm from 119 Park Avenue. Just wanted to first say thank you to everybody who's put a lot of work into this project, into the thought and design, and taking the public comment and moving down from a high number, 22, to 13. So I know that's a lot of work, and you guys put a lot of thought into that. I'd also like to say that I firmly believe in spending money on the schools. I'm a very progressive person. I have 2 kids that are going to be coming up in the school district, and I do not mind spending money on that because I think it's extremely important. I would like to say, however, that for me and my children, academics is the cornerstone. Athletics is a complementary to that. So to the extent that we can provide them with what they need to have safe fields. They need to have the opportunity to do all these things. And that's what I want for my kids. And that's what I think we all want. And I don't know, because quite frankly, I just bought a house, so I haven't looked into this that deeply. Maybe $13 million, that's the number. I don't know. I have to look into it more. But I believe that it's a very good idea to have at least one other option on the table. Because I can tell you that $13 million, for you folks who are in the board, you're looking at big numbers all the time. Maybe that $13 million doesn't seem like a lot of money. But when I see $13 million, I think that's a lot of money, you know? $200 a year, I mean, it's not nothing. We stretched our budget to buy this house. So, if we can do it for less, that's what I would do. And if you want people like me to vote yes, I need to know that it's necessary. If I don't know it's necessary, I'm voting no, and I'm telling everybody else to vote no. I have 3 other family members with households in Collingswood. I am in Collingswood, okay? So make sure that you convince people that this $13 million is necessary, or provide us with another option. Because whether it's long-term or short-term, that decision rests with the people of Collingswood, whether they want to do a long-term solution or a short-term solution. And if you spell it out to them on the ballot, and you know what? Maybe we should be sending information to people's houses. It's 35 cents, no, 48 cents first class stamp. Maybe everybody should have it all spelled out to them. Maybe it will be, I don't know, but I need to be sold on this, and I'm not sold right now. My only other concern is I'm very concerned about the environment. It's something that I have molded my life around, and I know that I live in a very progressive community, and people here care about the environment and care about environmental issues. If there's not a strong explanation of what the impacts are going to be, and a strong sense that you have dug deep into this and looked at all the options, such as not using AstroTurf. I don't know about the lighting issue is new to me, because I thought LED was great, but maybe, you know, the point is that we need to know that it's going to be done responsibly in the best way that it can be done, environmentally and economically. So I'm sure you've put a lot of thought into it, and I do appreciate it. I'm looking for more information, and I'm not saying I would say no, but at this point, I need to be convinced to say yes.
Let's move on to paragraph 8, the superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report. 8.01 is your enrollment figures. Up over last year, we're about 43 students up over last year. School safety drill, suspension report, and anti-bullying report are presented in section.
Calling the business administrator's report.
Yes, this evening I'm asking for approval for your October monthly transfers, your October secretary treasurer reports, payroll reports, student activity and food service financial statements, as well as the list of the November purchase orders and the November warrants.
Okay, moving on to paragraph 10, Village Council Finance Committee report. Mrs. McCarthy, please.
The Finance Buildings and Grounds Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. The committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. In item 10 10.08 and 10.09 are the purchase orders and the warrants listed in 9.05. 10.10 is approval of the resolution for the outdoor enrichment bond referendum. 10.11 is a request for proposals for the bond solicitor and the financial advisor and site engineer. 10.12 is a motion to approve the audit findings for the fiscal year ending June 30th. 10.13 is the annual Good Shepherd agreement for all the services we provide there. 10.14 is a list of equipment and textbook disposal. 10.15 is a recommendation to join the Education Data Services Co-op. 10.16 is a use of facilities for the travel field hockey banquet this evening, and 10.17 is a use of facilities for basketball tryouts. So we're looking for approval of items 10.01 through 10.17.
10.17 basketball tryouts are changed. Not sure what's on your agenda, but it's December 4th through 6th and 8th.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval of items 10.01 through 10.17?
So moved.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this item?
I move to table 10.10 and 10.11 till next meeting. We have another discussion about this bond referendum before the vote.
Does anybody, I guess, set or second?
Motion to table.
Does anybody second that?
What if I don't?
Doesn't matter.
It does not, right? All right, so then we have a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions or comments about?
Okay, right now you are voting to table 10. What was this number?
10, 11.
10.10 and 10.11. There's been a motion to table item 10.10 and 10.11 with the motion and the second. So the only thing you're voting on right now is that, right? Not the whole.
Yes, we're voting on, do we want to table 10.10 and 10.11? So, I guess maybe do a roll call on that?
Yes.
Say yes if you want to table, no, no.
Okay.
Everybody got it? Dr. Becker?
No.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Deeds?
No.
Mrs. Henry? No. Mrs. King?
No.
Mrs. McCarthy?
No.
Mrs. Miller?
No.
Mr. Stotts?
No.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mr. Hatsel?
No. Okay, so now it's moving on. So now we have we had a motion to approve items 10.01 through 10.17, and it has been seconded.
I did it, Madeline and Mr. Westbrook.
So, and then any questions or comments about that? We went through that. So now can we have a roll call vote on items 10.01 through 10.17?
Dr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes to all but 10, 10, and 10, 11, Jeanette.
Mrs. Deeds?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Katie? Yes. Mrs. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes to all, but 10, 10, and 10, 11.
Mr. Hatsel?
Yes. Moving on to curriculum committee. Mrs. Henry, would you please give us a report?
Yes, the school curriculum committee oversees and approves the district curriculum and assessment programs, as well as curriculum co-curricular programs and the school calendar. 11.02 and 11.03 are elementary, middle school, and high school field trips. 11.04 is an overnight field trip with a cost to each student to have the opportunity to go to Los Angeles. 11.05 is a request for a senior privilege, and 11.06 lists our students.
So we're looking for approval of items 11.01 to 11.06. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about curriculum items? Do we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Becker? Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Deeds?
Yes.
Mrs.
recommendation for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, considers all professional development opportunities for the staff member. This evening, I'll be looking for approval on 12.02, 3, and 4 for resignations. 12.05 to 12.07, we have some additional hires. 12.08 is permanent sub. 12.10, 12.09 are high school non-athletic stipends. 12.10 and 11 are FMLA. 12.12 is the curriculum rating. 12.13 is additional hours for an instructional assistant. 12.14 are practicum placements. 12.15 are high school winter athletic stipends. And 12.16 substitutes and tutors. And 12.17 is travel expense. So approval for items 12.01 to 12.17 is required.
Do we have a motion for that, please? Questions or comments? And we have a roll call, please.
Dr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Deeds?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Katie? Yes. Mrs. McCarthy? Yes. Mrs. Miller? Yes. Mr. Strauss?
Yes, except for the time Mark was asking for, I understand.
Mr. Wall?
Yes, except for 12.17 person conflict, abstain.
Mr. Haxel?
Yes. Dr. Ross, do you have anything in paragraph 13?
13.01 is the HIV report, final reading from last month, and 13.02 is the uniform memorandum of agreement between the school district and the police department, and that's it.
Okay, so this is our second and final public participation. Can we approve, motion to approve those policy items? Sorry. Some questions or comments? And I guess roll call too, right? All right. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Becker? Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Deeds? Yes. Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Katie? Yes. Mrs. McCarthy? Yes. Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mr. Haxel?
Yes. Moving on to paragraph 14, which is our second and final public participation section. Please stand and state your name and address these comments provided Mr. Less. Anybody have any questions or comments?
In light of the previous public comment section, I work with the Collingswood Educational Advocacy Group, which is a Facebook page for people interested in educational advocacy in Collingswood. Just wanted to get a little bit of information from the board in regards to the district's social media policy. We've been trying to avoid a lot of students to join the group as Facebook is meant to be for 18 and up, and I know that the policy is meant to give students the best chance just to keep them set up for success and to avoid conflicts and conflicts with policy. We haven't been allowing them into the group, but I just wanted the board to comment, if possible, on the social media policy, just to bring it to front of mind for a lot of people, because there is a lot of heated debate going on, and we should really be mindful of students and staff involvement as well. So if you could comment at all, that'd be great.
I'm not prepared to comment on it now, because I don't even, I have to review our policy, so, I mean, do we have, do you have a comment with, do you have a policy specifically about that?
We have a policy that regulates teacher-student interaction on social media.
Teacher and student. But,
And supports staff student.
but, student with it, I mean, I think it's sensible that they shouldn't be allowed, but I don't know how we could police that, because we don't have control, like, teacher-student, yes, student, staff, yes, but students with people in the general public who have Facebook page, I don't know how to police that.
But there is a policy and that people should be aware of. Yes?
There's a policy, right, that students and staff.
Staff is students.
Okay, thank
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Hi, Brenda Bird, 234 Haddon Avenue. I just wanted to say that was great about hearing about Oaklyn and having them come over here to Collingswood starting in 6th grade. I think that would be awesome and help them out and help out Collingswood too. It's really appreciated for a lot of hard work went into getting that to happen for many years now. So thank you for helping Oaklyn out with that. And also thank you for voting yes on 10.10 and 10.11. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to make a general comment to thank the board for your service. I know sometimes being a volunteer organization is a thankless position. I kind of know that firsthand, and I really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Can we have a motion to adjourn?